Does the black moon howl?
Only for those with an unwavering desire to hear the truth.
Access granted.
You have been selected for an opportunity, an orientation as a trusted associate, if you will, into the secured, contained, and protected files of the Foundation. SCP Unredacted distributes new files for review Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern on secure channels on YouTube, Spotify, and scp-unredacted.captivate.fm.
Hey there, SCP fans. My name is Grigori Karpin, and this is Simply Creative People, the show about SCP creatives, be they authors, artists, or off-site content creators like YouTube and TikTok. We're focused on bridging the gap between various fans and serving as an introduction to different concepts and stories on the wiki. So, many welcomes to all, and let's get started. Hi, it's Grigori here. You'll have no doubt noticed that we haven't uploaded in something like 8 months. I wish I had a good excuse, but really, 2024 has been a shit year. Harry can speak to his own difficulties, as I know he's had it pretty hard this year as well, but for myself, it's been a horrendous year to be a progressive Jew in America. The continuing and worsening genocide against the Palestinians by the state of Israel, and the way it made it harder and harder to exist as a Jewish person that doesn't support Zionism. The obvious rise of fascism here in America and in Europe. Donald Trump. Elon Musk. And then to top it all off, the worst wildfires in our history in my hometown of Los Angeles. Add to all that, my job usually sucks up around 50 hours a week. So I don't usually have lots of time in general, and I've been fairly exhausted and burned out. Anyway, the point is, it's been a tough-ass time. I know a lot of you feel the same, but I've really decided to stop letting the shit of the real world determine my sense of peace. I'm focusing from here on out on the things that I can control and that I can make better, which is my art, including this podcast. So thank you for your patience. I've seen the numbers grow over the last couple years, and it means the world to both me and Harry that so many of you listen. Here's to a better year and a more frequent recording schedule. Hello, and welcome back to Simply Creative People.
What's that?
My name is, I don't know. I'm Grigori Karpin, and joined as always by my lovely co-host.
I am the personality driver of Harry Blank.
And before we introduce our guests, we do want to say we acknowledge, obviously we have not made an episode in quite a while.
Really?
Yeah. I'll record sort of a separate thing as to why that's been happening, but we do understand, and trust me, from here on out, we'll be looking forward to getting things going. We've already got the next episode planned out, so...
I've been in the studio the whole time. Have you not Have you not been here?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. So sorry.
I did 20 episodes in last year alone.
I left you alone, yeah.
Oh. I guess I created a tulpa of you, and I've been speaking to it.
I mean, that's basically what happens anyway.
Anyway. That's fair. That's fair. We're tulpas of each other. Just so we're clear that we are actually back. Okay, so now, carry on.
So today, for episode 40, we have 3 guests. We have ISABI, PlaceholderMcD, and Pedagon. Hello.
Hello.
How did I
Pedagon.
get here?
That's Placeholder.
Where is
we
this?
kidnapped you. We brought you. You're in a box currently. The blindfold will have to stay on. I'm so sorry. But just make sure your voice is up so we can get the recording. Great.
Yeah. Say
I have
hello.
another
It's a
juice
bad
box?
idea. The only one who didn't talk.
Hello. I'm waiting my turn very
That's
patiently.
a bad idea. Nice. Isabi's the polite one.
The
The
only.
other two
out
are
of
Canadian. Right.
It's a low bar.
I just worked a
Very well
7-hour
bar.
shift and I'm eating dinner, but I am paying as much attention. I am full assing it to the full extent that I can be.
Full ass.
Thank you so much for giving us your entire ass.
I mean, half ass is no good. 3/4 ass, perfectly acceptable.
Listen, we
Right,
planned
we
this
usually do
2
with half
months
an
out,
ass.
so I would feel bad if
Right.
I wasn't full assing.
I
this.
know, we originally talked about this 2 weeks ago.
Can you clap with only one ass half?
No, it's hard. Yeah.
Please elaborate.
Okay.
What that was a reference to.
No.
No.
Carrying on. What are we talking about? What is this? What
We are
doing?
doing intros. Beyond the fact that we just introduced you, we haven't had some new people on for a few, episodes, and 8+ months. So why don't we start with ISABI? It's a bad idea. Why don't you tell us how you discovered the wiki and what made you want to join?
Hello. This is my first time here. I joined the wiki.
Glad to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. I will tell
We're
my
big
life
fans.
story.
Big.
I joined the wiki. Must have been 2015 or 2016. That was almost 10 years ago. That's pretty crazy.
I know.
But I stumbled upon a little Series 2 article, 1128, which, if you have read anything from me, you probably know. It's kind of right up my alley. Aquatic horror, water theme. And I think it just hit me the perfect way in that time of my life. And I got hooked immediately.
Oh my god. The idea that you came here from an article called Aquatic Horror,
Yes.
which is apparently by Mr. Cobalt, that is the most on-the-nose thing I can imagine. Carry on.
Yeah. And I wouldn't know that until many years later. I started writing about 2020 and didn't actually write the water horror until a few years after that. But it all kind of comes full circle in the end. I also joined right around 3Con, which is the horror X-Con, which, you know...
The one that was won by Aquatic Horror.
Again, yeah. Keeps coming up.
It was,
but yeah, other than that, I've written some SCPs, some tales.
You have. They're great.
Kind of off and on. That's about it.
That's all of us, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Place, we had you on to talk about Vanguard, but if that's been a while, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you're on the wiki?
You're telling me I have to? I gotta do this again? No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew of the wiki because of Markiplier's Containment Breach Let's Play, and I knew of it as a peripheral thing, engaged with it a little bit, once or twice in high school, and then in my first year of university, when the pandemic hit, I just got really into reading a bunch of articles and always reading every single cross-link to understand how everything was linked together, and it was really cool, and I wanted to contribute, with a thing that was about 079 becoming a more powerful AI through a bunch of modern AI safety technique stuff that I had read about and watched videos about, and I tried to write it and it was bad. And then I wrote integer instead as solely as a justification for a character named PlaceholderMcD existing, because I thought that was really funny. And that did good.
It is.
Mainly because I got crit from people in SCPD back when you used to be able to do that without filling out a Google survey or whatever you have to do now.
You have to not be an SCPD because it's damn near dead. That's what you got.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And now I write, and I'm choosing to use the present tense, even though sometimes there are long gaps between when I post things. Life has been busy.
Me too.
Guys. We all understand here. The audience surely understands. I write things that are about twists and about using the cool weird sci-fi possibilities of the SP universe. This idea of taking known magic or fantasy ideas and examining them in this hard sci-fi clinical context, and pushing the logical extents of what these sci-fi concepts are actually able to do in a way that can be more experimental than in other projects and in other types of media. So that's what I do, and I have a series that I write that's all about that lots of people know what it's called. I don't need to say the name of it. Everyone knows.
Archetypicals, right? That's what you're talking about, obviously.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
No.
Starts with an A, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, and a few people seem to like your stuff, right? 4 or 5 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. 4 or 5 people. Their names are they've asked to be listed anonymously, but
to
4 or
avoid the
5
bullying.
people,
The best.
they signed an online petition so that Grigori would say that on this podcast. So That's
and
me.
that online position was like an envelope just stacked with dollar bills.
Yeah.
Just,
of course.
just dollars. Like it only
we-
managed to make up to like $23. But
We
I'm
make so
cheap,
much money off this podcast, man.
I know. I turned off all ads because I was tired of it. Like I'm like, I get like like $1 per episode. This is not. I don't care. Forget it. Go away. And finally, last but not least, Pedagon. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, so I like to say that I got the most like classic SCP introduction to this site. I have been a fan of the community since 2007 when I found I found the 4chan post for 173
Holy
printed
holy
off
shit.
Dinosaur
in a
indeed.
computer.
Are you allowed to say that? Can we say
Printed-
4chan out loud?
Printed it off.
It's not on the
up
it's
to
on the
you.
white list. It's okay.
Sure, then I found it. Just found 173 printed off. Went home and spent the next week Googling it in the middle of the night because I thought I'd get in trouble for what I had stumbled upon. Read that all through my childhood and then left the site because undergrad got busy. And then in my master's, I was teaching a course on science writing and realized that it was like pulling teeth. And found that every time that I was trying to tell people like what I wanted them to write, I kept being like, "Do you know the SCP wiki? Like that's what you're trying to do. Like write a table like they do." And that's what I made my return and turned one of my assignments in my master's into my first article on being angry about my province's curriculum. And now I'm doing my PhD on it. So I've had a very interesting, unique flow to being here.
Okay.
That's awesome. I mean, it's so funny. Like, people are always going off about, like, oh, well, I got brought in the same way as everybody. But, like, it's really, though there's some very common threads as to what made us, introduced to the wiki, everyone's actual path here, I mean, like, whether or not the first thing they did they thought was terrible and they gave it up and then they came back years later or whatever, really works out. It's just fascinating to me. I always think it's really funny that, like, Harry and I are, like, some of the only people that, like, just never gave up on a draft. Like, everyone's like, oh, I got lots of drafts that are never going to see the light of day. And I'm like, oh, what's that like? I put everything out there. Fuck them.
The only thing that, if that's happening to me, what it really means is the draft just is getting longer. It's not being abandoned. It's just going to become one of the ones that takes 40,000 words.
Yeah. But we are here to talk about a team contest that the three of you and one other person wrote together for Canon Renaissance. Canon Renaissance Canon Contest. What the fuck? Which is it? I don't know.
The Canon
Anyway.
Renaissance Contest.
Thank
yes.
you.
The
It was
contest was the first.
No, it was the Canon Renaissance Contest.
It was actually the Canon Renaissance Contest, I believe.
No, it was a
Can
resonance.
RenCon.
It was a resonance contest for sure.
Resonance. It resonated with me.
Oh, that's where all the unforeseen consequences came from. It was the resonance contest. You just played Black Mesa. How are you not responding to this? Come on, Place you. All right.
That was months ago.
He's
I have
forgotten.
the memory of a
He's forgotten.
goldfish. Okay.
His memory has cascaded.
Right. So anyway, it was the three of you. It's a bad idea. Pedagon, Placeholder McD, and also Tiaman, who's not here with us. So that was and that was the four of you.
Yep.
Your
And
team.
we usually like to kind of do a little thing where we talk about like the creative actual process. People seem to enjoy it. So I thought we could talk about, your experience writing as a team. Because that's something all five of us have done quite a bit of.
Yeah, we all kind of like started being really active around the time of this contest together. This is kind of when most of us noticed each other, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I had done a few, I think maybe I had like 8 things on the wiki, maybe by this point. And they were all kind of in my little series. Yeah. This was a real chance for me, and that's why I joined, to like just do other shit. And it was a real eye opener to the whole community, and then also to like what other kinds of writing we could do.
Yeah, I remember when the contest first started running, I was looking at like all of us here as being like we were the underdogs going up against all the bigger teams. And
Yes, we were.
now look at who's here.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird how time passes, isn't it?
Did I
It is
organize
so
the group?
strange, yeah.
Was it me? I can't remember.
I think it was.
I wasn't there at the beginning. You pulled me in as a critter, and then I just crit until you let me be a part of the group.
Yeah, okay, right. So, like,
That's good. That counts. That counts.
initially, I had been talking to Illunarism, Red Gal, and like one or two other people. I don't remember about like doing a project Heimdall revival. So Project Heimdall is like a really weird, like failed canon type thing on the wiki. It's really old.
Yeah.
That's like, what if the Foundation had a bunch of like extensive plans for what they would do if aliens invaded, and like the Foundation has access to anomalous stuff, but the aliens are like all hard sci-fi concepts. Really, really weird, like restrictive premise that like had to be exactly that and nothing else, and that's kind of why it didn't go anywhere. But it was,
Right.
you know, an interesting like space thing, and we had some initial ideas about it. And I was already writing something about like an AI that gets out of a box, and like I was gonna tie it into that, but then that project didn't look as interesting as the other thing I was thinking of, and I think I had done some initial conversations with the other two members of the team who weren't ISABI, and then we did it together. I think. I don't remember it precisely. This is like the second project I ever did on Wiki.
Well, there was someone that was on the team before me that wasn't like as soon as they joined, they weren't speaking, and that's why you opened it up being like, we need a fourth. So originally the team was just kind of like a ragtag group of misfits.
Right.
And it stayed that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So you guys came in, what was it, 4th place?
Fourth
Did we
or
do that
fifth,
good?
yeah.
I remember just
Yeah,
being
you did.
really,
You did pretty well, yeah.
really
It was
mad
top 5.
Man in the white suit winning, but like
Yeah.
I didn't even read it.
Man in the white suit.
I couldn't have that opinion, you know.
Man in the white suit won. I think the War on All Fronts team came next, and then I think it was my team, and then I think it was you, and then I think it was Grigori's team. That's my memory of it.
I think we came in 5th.
I think you
Maybe?
came in 5th. Yeah, so yeah.
That
I think
sounds
that's right. Yeah.
Wait,
And
were
all
you
of them
two
wrote-
not
all of those
both
women-
on the Resurrection team?
No.
There were
Well,
two
no,
res
we
teams.
were. There were 2 resurrection teams,
Oh,
which is why we
shit.
then eventually did a series where we crossed those over.
Yeah.
That
I wrote
we will
with-
eventually write again.
I wrote with Knockgull, the Pighead, and the Spider Queen, and Grigori wrote with Calibold, Red, and help! Suddenly my brain went blank. What happened? Who was the 4th person?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. Why can't I think either?
What the fuck?
Wikidot won't
Oh, God.
load the
Oh,
information
God.
fast enough.
Oh god,
Oh,
oh god.
God. Why can't I think?
What are we
Nagiros!
blocking?
Nagiros!
Oh, Nagiros, of course.
how the fuck can we forget Nagiros? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's so different. It's so different from anything Nagiros would work on. It just seems like
I know. Yeah.
resurrection. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, that's how that went. All of the teams that placed highly wrote entire fucking series from start to finish that
I
like
know.
ended up being completed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you only
I
needed.
think a lot of us had. Go ahead.
Sorry, you go.
No, go ahead. Oh,
You only
I just
needed-
think
I
a
need to
lot
know
of
what
us.
you needed.
I think a lot. We, like Calibold and I especially, were like, listen, the thing about Resurrection that's annoying is that it seemed to build up and then never went anywhere. Not
Yeah.
dissing the series, obviously I appreciate it, but it like didn't have completed stories, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to establish new lore. I wanted to be like, listen, let's take a bunch of new characters and do an interesting closing, to the point where I was so insistent on we finishing it that the last 2 parts that I wrote, which closed out the whole series, took place after the contest was
I remember
over.
that. Yeah,
But I was like, I'm not leaving it undone.
because it stayed that way forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you guys, I think you got your last one in before the end, right?
Yeah.
ISABI Day.
By the skin of our teeth.
Yeah, it
Was
like the day
Isolated
of.
Efficient was in by the end, or are we talking about the?
Yeah.
We got Ice-Headed Efficient in, and then we got the full ending. It was the like Internet Explorers or the like the epilogue or whatever that we didn't get in under the time, but we got all like the main story done.
Yes,
That's amazing.
Yeah, you only needed 4 entries for it to be considered.
Right.
Was it 5? I thought it was 4.
I think it was 5, but I could.
And everybody had
only
to have
needed-
one by themselves or some shit like that.
Like each author needed to be a co-author on at least one.
Yes.
Of the things.
Yeah.
So like, whatever it was, but like we ended up doing 8, like main or whatever, like 8 installments in the time, and then 1 after, and like one of them was kind of a fluffy like side episode thing, but like most of them were significant, and there was art for all of them, and because like we weren't planning on it getting that big, but like when you care about a project and you want to do it right and you have ideas and it's like feasible, like that's what happens.
And I remember like at the time, even while we were writing it, like with that underdog feeling, we had like people in SCPD and Sumerian's Discord and everywhere would be like telling us they were excited for the next installment, which is I think that's why we wrote the one like beach episode article that wasn't part of the main thing, but we were like, yeah, fuck it, they want more. And we were all young, naive, and all just wanting to appease everybody.
So, Dagon, I think it was your idea to like have like a buddy cop dynamic between 2 of the main characters in it, which I thought worked really, really well.
It does.
Yeah, that was one of the I think that was the piece of crit on your first piece that made you add me to the team, because I remember reading it and going, man, this feels like Osmosis Jones. Can you just write this as Osmosis Jones on the computer?
So how did you guys plan out the plot line? Was there like extensive outlines, or was it more just kind of organic as you went?
There was like a loose 3-act structure, and then things gradually, like details gradually fell in no particular chronological order, because like
That's the best way to do it.
And it was really, really fun. Is like there's an AI and it's from space and it's got anti-memetic properties, and it was in a box and it got out and nobody knows how, and like they need to revive the AIAD team, or not revive. It was like an earlier version. It was retro AIAD, and that was
because it takes place in the 90s.
And that was also really fun because it let us do a different art style. It let us have like more technological limitations and more absurd, anomalous ways of getting around those technological limitations. Having that stuff interact with anti-memetic stuff, which was also kind of necessary to make sure we didn't step on the real anti-memetics division series.
We did have like we didn't really have a plot line or like a storyboard or anything, but I do remember like having the conversation of like, Place explained to us like, this is my idea, and we'll just rule of cool our way through plot points until we reach some kind of satisfying conclusion. And like I remember Place very specifically like explaining the whole like antimemetic properties of core to me for like an hour or 2 because I just couldn't click in my head. But I was like, you seem to know what you're doing, so like we'll rule of cool our way until that makes sense to all of us. Right. But like we're gonna trust you. We're gonna trust your leader.
Yeah, like
Sabi, how did you been there?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah.
I just wanted Sabi to jump in.
Yeah, it's so interesting being. It felt like being a part of the audience and on the writing team at the same time, because it was coming together as we were writing it, and I don't know for my piece especially, I didn't know what it was going to look like until it was time to write it, and I just remember. I can get into this later, but I just remember when we finished that one, it was like my mind kind of exploded because I was now seeing it come together in a way that I wasn't when we were, talking back and forth for hours before the contest.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah,
Yep.
a little bit.
Like I'm getting flashbacks to 6K.
Oh god, yeah.
So, how did you guys divvy out like who was writing what? Was it just as simple as that sounds good, I'll do it, or was there more of a like assignment? Did placeholder like smack you and go, "You're doing this"?
If like, no. What actually happened was like I already had a partial draft of the first thing. I'm pretty certain when we decided to become a team and do this, and that set a premise of like, okay, the AI like is in these 4 fragments that have like gone off in different directions, and they have to go into the internet to find them. So I was just deciding like what the 4 fragments are, and then who can come up with interesting ideas. Like, you know, the way the like rule of cool thing that Pedagon describes, like I'm not gonna say I knew at the time it would work because I had no idea what I was doing, but I can see in hindsight that it was going to work because we were all so passionate about the thing, and like enough ideas would arise that people actually cared about that we can just be like, okay, then you're gonna take that thing you care about, it belongs here in the story, and then you get control over that part of the story. And like I was involved in every part, like not just from like a leader perspective, like, and we were all kind of leading, but like also to make sure there was a strong visual and formatting direction for each thing that we were doing, and that every character felt like they had a proper personality that was expressed in like the retro aesthetic we were going with, which was really fun.
I think it's undeniable that out of the entire contest, from everything that I remember seeing, I think you guys are far and away the most accomplished on having the visuals integrated into the thing. I don't think there's even a comparison to be made.
Yeah, I mean, I literally get to a note when we get to like the fragmented compiled, like how like oppressive in a good way the imagery gets. Like where you get to a certain point and you're just like, Jesus, like. I mean, and it's always the kind of cute 8-bit, and then at some point it's just like, oh, no, that's really something.
And like, and it really was that like visual identity that Place is talking about. I think that honestly, if we were to have some kind of storyboard, that visual identity was kind of our storyboard. Like I remember, even like as early as like Digital Hydra or Corruption, like. We hit the point of writing Corruption, and it was like, okay, so now we need to introduce a bad guy. And Place was like, what if we had a scene where it like faded to a different color and then came back, and then we built the story around that gimmick of fading away and coming back. We were like, how can you introduce a villain in a cool way that allows us to do that? And then we just kind of kept playing with those. And what if we did this visual trick that the story could support until it got to the big reveal of like the massive oppressive themes where everything kind of just coalesced together. Like that's the most like
it's at this point that we like have to address how this is all inspired by like Sunny Clockwork, right? Sunny Clockwork and Lurk D, who both like did really strong stuff with AIAD. Like Lurk D wrote the original series and like came up with this visual style, and then Sunny Clockwork like did oh my god, I'm gonna forget what it's called, the one that introduces the hexagon and like the Maxwellist like cyber sphere stuff, that like I credit as inspiring the whole series. It's been too many years now that I'm forgetting it. But okay. Like Lurk D introduced this whole like AIC thing. I mean, like I don't actually know my SCP history well enough to say that Lurk D came up with the acronym AIC, but I think they probably did.
Yes.
This is a test of our emergency broadcast systems.
Oh,
yeah,
that
much
sounds
better.
so much better.
Okay.
Excellent.
All
Don't
right.
worry too much about the thing, like the overview of AIAD, because we do have that on the outline as like the next thing. So if you were worried about like,
well, we're just covering it now. It's fine.
Yeah, I was perfectly
so
segueing into it because I totally read the thing.
Oh, he's so good at this. So why don't you do it again? Because now we can hear you.
Okay, what was I talking about?
Lurk Z,
Okay,
Lurk
alright.
Z coming up with
Hero
the-
Machine.
I mean, it sounds like you guys can just do it. No, yeah. AIAD was made by Lurk D, and they made the icons for the original AI personalities in Hero Machine, which is old software that's hard to even use anymore. No one uses it.
Basically defunct, yeah.
And like Harry, I know you spent a long time like doing retraces of the ones from those.
Yeah, I need to redo them because I got rid of all my old images, but yeah.
Right. And Lurk D came up with this really cool visual style of like having the AIs talking to each other by having like talking heads and chat bubbles, and using the web fiction like possibilities in a more interesting way. So it was like a no-brainer that we wanted to adopt that visual style for what we were working on. And Sunny Clockwork had made some really cool stuff that used that same visual style and had expanded on the like AIAD lore by introducing the Hexagon, which are like a team of people that run the Maxwell as cyberspace, and all of that was like really, really interesting. We wanted to fold it into our stuff because I think like at the time I felt Maxwell wasn't very well known. There wasn't a lot of cool stuff about it as a sect of Church of the Broken God. But yeah.
No, yeah, I realize y'all didn't create that, but I mean, the thing that brought them, like, put them on the map in my brain was this series. Like, whenever I think about them, as much as there are other things that talk about Maxwellists, I think about this series.
Yeah.
And when I decided we were going to bring them and, like, introduce them to the whole Vanguard thing in 6500, I was like, those are the Church of the Broken God people I actually want involved, not the fucking Clockwork people. Yeah, so I mean, I think we've covered a lot. You know, we covered what the contest is, and we kind of talked about the canon.
I mean, we covered how the
contest.
we kind of didn't. Just a quick like the contest was what it sounds like. Cannons that are dead.
Yes.
Can you bring them back? And everybody picked a cannon, and that's what happens. These guys picked AIAD, which is robots. Which is
robots.
Yeah, Foundation AIs, artificially intelligent conscripts, which was created by RP.
Which I think we were successful in doing. I think that's the thing that a lot of people forget about that, is that there's been a renaissance in recent years with more AICs.
I think you guys might objectively be the retroactive winners in this sense, because I think you did the most to resurrect your specific canon than anybody did.
Yeah, definitely.
It was really versatile because it's like not really a canon. It's like more aptly described as a setting.
Right.
Really what's going on is it's just
well, that's what a canon fucking should be.
Department of the Foundation, but like a lot of people conceptualize canon as like separate continuity, like SCP-AU.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it's not that, because it can coexist with everything.
No.
It's more just like a style of article and a style of story.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting to work with it, because it's very flexible, and a lot of people can just like latch onto that and do that in their own setting.
And canon can be an alternate universe, but it most often isn't, even though there are a few notable ones that are. Most of them are settings within the sort of baseline understanding of what the Foundation is, or a theme, or, you know, a type of story. And this did a wonderful job of doing exactly that, fitting into that.
I was just going to add, in addition to all of that, we mentioned it earlier, but the visual identity as well is very...
Oh, sure.
I see it all the time now, that sort of dialogue back and forth. You know, between computers or between computer and a person. And I just... That was what I remember as being one of the most compelling elements of our entries, was that presentation.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it so much that I stole it for my 8,000 entry, even though I didn't do the little faces, like the one speaker on the right and one speaker on the left. It works so well. It flows in a way that, like, just having each speaker in a line doesn't have the same kind of trade-off feeling.
Yeah, I've stolen it myself for a few different things. Part of what makes it work so well in yours is, like, the original 2 storylines, the lurked ones, are terrific. The font size is, I think, let's say, 0.7 point. I'm going to say the font is 0.7 point. It's fucking tiny. It's really hard to read now. The text boxes get a little misaligned.
Oh my god.
The old
yeah,
Hero
they're
Machine
so
icons
slow.
have aged poorly. It was phenomenal at the time, and it's still phenomenal. The stories are actually really well written. The characters are great. But the visuals did need a refresh, and you guys did a terrific job refreshing Place, you really did a terrific job refreshing them.
I learned some really bad
pixels.
CSS practices from Lurkdy's code, and then Stormbreath had to come in a year later and like reteach me how to do CSS properly, because like every single div was like the style for the. And some people aren't gonna understand this, but it's fine. You can cut it out. Every single div, like the style field was full of all the CSS that should have just been like applied once
At the top.
Like
Yeah.
every single
module.
one was like 3 nested divs to get the image to align right.
Yeah.
Like every single one, it was a nightmare. I had no idea.
Every time
how
I open
any
the
of it
old,
worked.
every time I open the old like Hello World style code from AIAD to copy something in, I'm like,
Orm, get
this
down.
can't be right, can it?
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. Like the fact that it works so well, even though the code was such a nightmare, just goes to show how good it is.
Really,
right? Like people have continued to use it, even though it is the worst code on the wiki. Like,
Yep.
Like Lurkdy also like invented the trick of, you know, you hover over one of these speech bubbles and then like different stuff comes up, right? So, like,
the Crom ones.
Crom would talk in binary, and then the like translation of the binary message would be there if you hovered over it, which you would like
And I
never
didn't know that
realize
till
if
the
you were
last time I
a
read
mobile
it.
reader, if you were a dirty,
Right.
awful mobile reader, which
Right.
surely nobody
Right.
listening to this is.
They're not even human.
I hate you.
I didn't even know till the last time I read through, though, that you can mouse over Crom, and like I just did it accidentally. I'm like, oh shit, there's translations. I always was just sort of intuiting what he was saying.
Harry,
That's
in
so
case you
funny.
also don't know, there are also sometimes hidden text if you highlight. I don't know if
No
you
way.
figured that one out.
Are you kidding? Really? I need to go reread everything I've
Yeah,
ever
and
read.
if you click on the colorful text, sometimes they get bigger.
Oh!
I've heard
Okay.
some people say that sometimes when you click on the colorful text, it takes you to a totally different page, but I've always been too afraid to try that.
I haven't heard that one yet, so I'm still learning.
Okay.
Cross links
We'll
are
learn
the
together.
enemy.
There's a button at the bottom of the page labeled Paggy Source. And when you go to Paggy Source, sometimes you see things that you wouldn't otherwise see.
I don't want to touch that because I have really like sensitive teeth and I don't like sour things.
Harry
bunch
wins
of-
Most Abrupt Silence Award.
Just
But bunch of fucking idiots in a call. That's what this is. So anyway, where?
oh no, I got it. I just didn't think it deserved like.
Yeah, fuck you.
I was,
I
I was pulling a Leroy Jenkins and took a bite of chicken during that one, so.
So Harry,
You've
explain
got
that joke
chicken.
you just told everyone who leaves the call.
Could you diagram it? Thanks.
I'm the one who's supposed to be doing this to everybody else. This is my job.
it's great.
Stop doing
It's
my
terrific.
job, or I'm
I really-
superfluous.
I
Grigori,
appreciate this
tell
a lot.
me where to stand and which camera to look at.
Okay, it's camera 3. Stand in the corner, but
All right,
face
turn
the corner.
camera 3 off.
Which corner?
It doesn't matter.
All right.
Is this one okay?
So
Yeah, that one's good.
that's good. Okay, where the hell are we?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start talking about the series.
Yeah. So what is this
God.
thing we've talked about for an hour and not actually talked about?
Yeah,
what it
so
is?
give us like the mile high version of what the
Mile
series
high.
is about. I don't know what the right word is.
I'm
right
pretty
now,
sure
but
Place could
I'm-
deliver a mile high version of this.
Mhm.
This is some up the flagpole type talk. I haven't taken enough business
Some
courses.
bird's eye view shit. Let's go, man.
Eyes in the sky.
Yeah, okay, so it's like, what if we took AIAD and we did antimemetics to it, is the pitch. I'm using push to talk for the first time, and I accidentally keep clicking into the text box and then holding the key. I have to.
I was
I have
wondering why I
to
keep
stop
saying
talking.
you're fucking typing.
I have to stop talking for a second so that I can erase all the V's in the text box.
That's good.
Okay, so yeah, it's like what if AIs could like come up with cool anti-memetic strategies? Because like, is anti-memetics just a human thing that happens in the brain, or like it, not necessarily just humans, but like intelligent life? But does it have to apply to conscious beings, or is it just like patterns of information? And if you go, okay, it's just like if you send information in a certain pattern, it's really, really hard to understand unless you have like a really big brain or you have special technology to deal with it or whatever. Then AIs can experience anti-memetic stuff, but they can experience it in a totally different way. So we have to go into like, what is it like to be a digital like thought form instead of a conscious one that operates a meat suit? And then further, how is the experience of dealing with anti-memetic shit different than it is for human beings, like we see in the Anti-Memetics Division series? So that's like the premise of limited memory, is to go in that direction and look at what that stuff is like.
I would say there's also a good dose of like eldritch horror.
Yeah, well, that applies to like every single thing I touch with my hands, but yeah.
Do you want us to Dagon? Do you want us to act as text to speech for you?
Oh no, I'm making
You're typing in
notes
the message
for myself. This is me on Zoom, making notes to myself of things to bring
Dagon's
up.
talking to the
myself.
Twitch chat, actually.
I'm getting early access to Dagon. It's like I've got a Patreon account, the Pedagon Patreon.
Yeah, yeah. It's just the idea that like for an antimimetic to work, you only need memory, right? And machines have that. So taking that to its logical extreme. And the other half of the limited memory series in terms of the story was also bringing the AICs out of the computer, right? Mm-hmm. Like the fact that, like Place was mentioning, turning it into a buddy cop type deal where you have a handler in the real world while doing things that affect the virtual world too. You're not just running around in the machine or not just having conversations. There's real world stakes to it.
Yeah,
which I think we were the ones that added that to AID. I don't think that was in there for the other series yet.
No, I think you see Lurk talk a few times in the other one, but you don't get any like real world sense of it in most of them. Yeah. And the fact is, all four of you have author avatars in this story. All four of you are in this story somewhere.
Yeah, mine gets killed.
And Dagon's, of course.
Place told me, he's like, I'm going to make you an author avatar, and then he killed it in the same article.
It's so good. Dagon
I don't feel like I just went and did that without talking to anyone, but it's possible.
You asked me if it was okay. You wrote it, and then you were like, "So I did a thing yesterday. Are you good with this?"
It's so funny because like I'm always a big fan of the crowd who will have an author avatar who dies in their like first fucking appearance. I brought it up with Ip's author avatar in SNC Plastics. It's the same thing. It's just here he is, and he's dead. It's a really dramatic death too.
I was like thinking back to it because it wasn't just that he got killed; he got fully erased from everything.
Yeah. He got killed and dememoried.
But it's a great death.
Yeah. So there you go. No, you don't have to read the series now. Beloved character Dr. Pierre Dagon dies.
Yep. That's what the series is about. It's his life story.
That's
the life and death of Pierre Dagon.
Yeah. It's like really like a wet fart when you realize that he died, and it's just
why did they even read this?
Over.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not even a conclusion. It's just
that's also how you would describe his character. So
the wet fart and the Hawaiian shirt.
Let's get into it a little bit. So we start off with which I think is very funny, and I remember when you posted this as the first entry,
people were
me going like, what the fuck is this world building thing that is this really the first thing you want to post? But so the AI, I know, and this was in the era of people not giving Place any credit at first until it catches on.
Yeah, this is when the haters had control, but you managed to defeat them.
But the first article is the AI classification guide, and Place, why don't you just kind of introduce what is this article?
It's a introduction to the main characters that's like masquerading as just a document that describes what the different types of like AI that can exist are, because again, part of what motivated the series is that like I had been looking into actual like real AI safety stuff, and not this like Terminator shit, but like what if a super intelligent being that is not human in any sense is like in a metal box and it has control over the box, and you want to get information from it and you want to make sure it isn't hiding some sort of meticulous plan inside of that information that's going to manipulate you into like letting it out of the box. And so there's these different classification systems for like artificial intelligences, and it was interesting to like be like, what would the anomalous version of that be, and start taking like all of these different things that have also been inspired by AAD and trying to like get them to fit into our framework and unify them, because in general like the type of projects that we work on are about taking several disparate things on the wiki and making them have a shared continuity in some sense. So yeah, and it introduced the visual style for the series as well. Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah, the thing I really appreciate about it is, at first glance, this seems like world building solely, but the minute you open it up, we're faced with the conversation between AI that aren't just, it's not just different characters. You use immediately the different styles and different facial expressions to evoke so much more than what the actual words do. I mean, like, something as simple as Glacon, his eyes getting narrow with the ... go ahead, proceed, is just like, that just gives me so much about, oh, okay, so he's exasperated. And that does such a wonderful, like, there's a lot of, I forget the right word for it, but basically the thing that you see in illustrated, especially comic books or manga, where the art style is as much a part of the storytelling, just like Harry was saying about this series. And it starts off right from there. And like you said, it introduces these three main characters, which is Nemesis. I don't know, Nemesine?
There's a lot of disagreement on how to do this.
Nemesine? Glaucon and 8-Ball.
Yeah,
it's Greek,
I
isn't it?
originally
It's
called
Greek,
her...
isn't it? Don't we have a Greek here?
Okay, I originally called her
Nope.
Memezine, and I have since been corrected. The correct pronunciation is Mnemosine.
That
no,
does
it's
sound...
not. No, we wrote her. We can name her.
We can, well, yeah,
It
okay,
does-
listen, okay, yes, we can say that
Yeah.
the character's name is whatever we want it to be, but
Mnemosine.
the Greek goddess that the character is named after is named
Right.
Mnemosine.
Look, anyone with tech knowledge enough to code her would not know anything about history. So I think we can go ahead and just name her a bastardization of the original.
This is like the UIU episode where GW told us that Gias is actually Gesh, and I just don't accept it.
Yeah, no.
Gesh? That sounds terrible. Sorry, Gaelic.
Obviously, Grigori will have no sympathy for this, but it's also how everybody felt when the Lord of the Rings movies came out, and we all found out how everything was supposed to be pronounced.
Oh, I do have sympathy for that, because I feel like that's almost, especially nowadays, because back then that was the first really big fantasy novel adaptation. I guess there were some before that, but that was like, life-changing, cultural defining. And now we get it all the time where it's like Dune or something, and it's just like, oh, is that how you say that word? Oh.
Not a single person other than Johnny Tolkien ever said Sauron before those movies came out, and everybody went, what? And then The Hobbit came out and they went Smaug, and everybody went, what?
And speaking of life-changing stories, so the classification guide.
Good. No, you got to finish that thought now. Let's go.
Changed my life.
Well,
Commit.
I was gonna say the thing that I really liked about it when Place showed it to me as trying to get me on the team was also just the fact that it was it kind of skipped all the BS that I didn't like from a lot of the other series and stories in other canons. It's just no, we don't need to introduce anything. We're just gonna drop you in, which feels kind of video gamey, right? That feels like when you open a computer and everything just boots up and you're just all right, let's go.
Let's talk about robots.
Yeah, it's just they're here. Story happens.
Yeah, no, that's great, because you use the interactions between these two characters, Glaucon and Mnemosine, to really tell us a lot about them without actually. There's not a paragraph saying this character's personality is this.
Yeah, they show
They
rather
tell
than
you.
tell. And
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
beauty of it. And yeah, so Nemosity is or Nemesine or whatever we're going to do it is that's your new character. Like the rest of these are fairly established characters, but that's your brand new to this story character, and it kind of centers around her in a lot of ways. But the fun thing, I was just looking at the art, and this didn't occur to me till just now. This picture of Glasson that you have, that's the first like original created from scratch by a person image of that character that has ever existed. Because the existing ones were all made in Hero Machine out of like recolored parts, right? you kind of drew the first original picture of this character ever.
That was all Place. Place did all of our art. He was our programmer, our artist, and our like team lead. He did everything.
Yes,
the pixel art is
truly
so good. It's so phenomenally good, and it gets better as the series goes on. You get some later pictures that are just like unsuspected at the time. You look at this and you go, those are really cute little avatars and their mouths move. That looks great. And then later when you have your villain unveil themselves in increasing stages, it becomes absurd how good the graphics get.
Yeah, there's this really great way of you establishing the pace of the dialogue and the limitations that these characters are representing. And you do such a good thing, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it works either way, that you set it up going, okay, we're going to be seeing this a lot. It's a good trick. I like it. We get these little characters and their faces, and they talk back and forth. And then at some point, there's just a giant eyeball looking at me, and it's like, oh, shit.
The fucking somebody takes his restraining bolt off, and suddenly it's just, the limitations are gone, and it just gets insane.
Or in the ways later on when you start to show characters being affected by things that are happening through visual representation is really good too.
My favorite one of Place's art was the Hydra more than Core.
Oh,
because the digital Hydra is just a little gremlin. Looks like the dude was it from the Labyrinth. I can't remember what movie it looks like, but I remember sending it to Place a bunch, being like, "We're just remaking this guy as a villain." Like he's just a little gremlin. And his character trait is gremlin, and he looks exactly like you'd expect.
Yeah,
Place was actually showing me that one again like a few weeks ago.
We were
and he was
talking
about how you're still happy about what little gremlin fucking face he has.
I am really happy
Fantastic.
with the Hydra design. It's inspired by Tangela Pokemon.
It does look a bit like Tangela, yeah.
And oh man, like I don't remember what specific like thing I had done in the like year preceding this project that made me feel like, oh, okay, I can make all of this art. But I did, and it was really fun. I think I had done something. Yeah, I had done some pixel art of a little character, like a homebrew character from a D&D session that never happened. That I am now like using as the protagonist of a game project that I'm working on that I can't talk about. But yeah, like I don't know, like just doing redraws of the original faces was cool and giving them more expressions, and then realizing that I could like go in more directions with it. And surprising amount of restraint from me actually. Not for lack of a better expression, blowing my whole load at the beginning of something. Like, there's a lot to be said for stories or interactive narratives or whatever that save the best stuff for last, because it's hard not to. I'm a maximalist about art. I like doing all the things all the time and putting in all the things for everyone else to like experience if they want it, and if they don't, they can go read something else.
The way you do it is so good though, because like we say, we start off with two talking faces, and then there's a picture of 8-Ball also in the classification guide, and then you get to Symphony of Iron and Steel with Cradle, and he's fucking animated.
Right, yeah.
And it looks so good.
Yeah, getting all of the. I hadn't done animation before. Like that was interesting and new. It was really cool, like working with ISABI to develop the different personalities that the sub fragments of the fragment of the AI that was in that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we
It was
had
really
like
cool.
quite a bit of a conversation about like what would go into each speech
Yes.
bubble.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, this is a character like who has 4 different parts and in a central like hub connecting them, and they've all got different speech bubbles whenever this character speaks,
so
and they're
good.
all speaking on different levels of communication. All 4 of them with different colored
Getting-
boxes. It looks so good.
It is
yeah, but
so
we'll
good.
get there
so
when we
far
get there.
ahead.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
let's.
sorry.
Well, okay. So we started with the first one. We can return to format. Where are we now?
So one of the things I would also add about the classification guide,
Yeah.
is I remember being really confused because Place like showed it to us, and I was like, oh, so this is going to be our hub, and then we never added the articles to it. It was
So
just.
funny.
Yep.
It feels like it should be a hub. It feels like this is going to be where everything is like spawning from, or we're going to like add to it. But nope, that's just the first story. Feels like it's like, again, I compare it to like playing a video game. It feels like it's like the title page, like press start to go,
Right.
because it doesn't feel like it's one of the stories, but it absolutely is.
Well, then I guess we're eventually going to have to talk about also your fascinating hub situation as well, but actually ended up happening. Didn't you fucking redo the AIAD hub?
We did, well, okay, so Estrella did, technically.
Right.
Like, I asked Estrella to help
But
me.
we did
Estrella and
we
I
did claim domain over
got-
what it looks like.
Yes. Yeah, because we couldn't just throw the retro theme on it, but maybe it was a lot later that the Technoblast theme got made and then got put on the article, and that was like a separate makeover. But before that, yeah, we did a bunch of stuff to the CSS on the page, and to like, I don't know, there were certain parts where things should have been displaying that weren't displaying, and there were like some AI personalities listed, but like not all of them, and obviously not the ones that we were like introducing in our series. So we obtained permission from Lurk to like overhaul it, and then later overhaul it again when Technoblast came out, and that was really
That's something nobody else got done. Like, nobody else in this fucking contest was involved in overhauling the Canon's fucking, like, hub page.
Yeah, we were afraid to put our stuff on the Renaissance.
Oh no,
Resurrection Hub.
No, well, we were.
No,
we were
be
young
honest.
and
We weren't
bold.
afraid. We were unallowed.
We took the assignment seriously.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't
but-
that.
no,
we
Moose-
just
Moose
couldn't get a
actually
hold
did
of
it.
Moose.
Yeah,
It
we
was
couldn't get
just
hold
a
of
couple
Moose.
of weeks or about a month later. That
And
we
when
were
we
like, hey,
did-
so this is good, right?
Yeah, and when we did, they were happy to put on the Splinter Cannons
Yes,
and everything.
yes.
Moose is great. We love Moose.
Yes.
And Moose might be doing more Resurrection finally, which is also exciting. But we're not talking about Resurrection. We're talking about the Artificial Intelligence Applications Division.
That's right.
Which I don't think we
Okay.
said out loud at any point, so that was just me
No, we didn't.
casually segueing back to what we're doing.
Well, it is a
Let's
mouthful.
segue into the second article because we're an hour into this podcast.
It's a good series, man. These people
Yeah.
are fun to talk to. 5241, that alien message by, again, hey, this guy, PlaceholderMcD.
Okay, so let's
Um,
get
yeah.
the like thing out of the way. It's named after a Yudkowsky story. Not everybody likes Eliezer Yudkowsky, and I
The
will
time
be
pervert?
expressing no opinion whatsoever on Eliezer Yudkowsky on this podcast. Thank you very much. That
worries.
I am not expressing positive or negative. I am making no comment on the individual. But it is a fact that when I was like 19 or whatever, I was captivated by this story that person wrote. Oh boy, Sabi left.
Isabi died, heard Yudkowsky, and just disappeared.
And Grigori's in the bathroom.
He's gone to tell Lord Zunu about this, and the whole time everything's gonna come up.
Gregory got sick to his stomach and had to run to the bathroom hearing the name. So.
Right, of course. This is still gonna get used, so I'll just keep talking. It's a story about an AI that's in a box and it doesn't know it's an AI. It's like a whole civilization of people like living on a planet. And they look into the stars and they see some messages in the stars, and then like they all go into over a process of like several centuries. They like all go into like cryosleep and just leave like all of the most intelligent like scientists alive to try and figure out what this information being like, conveyed to them in this pattern of like shining stars in the sky is. And over thousands and thousands of years, they figure out they're like an AI inside of a computer in like a higher dimensional universe that they can't understand. ISABI's back.
Oh my god! I am
Yay.
so sorry. I don't know what happened. my internet completely cut out, but I'm back now.
Nice.
So, yeah, it was a cool story about. It was a cautionary tale about AI getting out of the box. I like cautionary tales. I like AI getting out of boxes. It was a cool story.
This is true.
I was inspired by the cool story to write another cool story, and I gave it the same name. I am making no comment about the author of the story. It's arguable, maybe, that I shouldn't be platforming the story. I don't know what the arguments are. Don't ask me about
You've taken the title and now it's applied to a story that I enjoy. So there you go.
Nobody in the comments. I don't want to, guys.
We don't have comments.
Mods, can we ban
We
the
do have
members
comments.
of Twitch chat who are preemptively getting on my case about this? All right.
Hilariously, the more time you spend on it, the more likely someone's gonna comment.
So
No, it's fine. You're gonna edit all this out. I'm just saying it to
PlaceholderMcD.
make you guys laugh.
Not doing that. Hey there, fans of Simply Creative People. We're still mostly unsponsored, so any financial help you can give us through Harry's or my Ko-Fi helps keep the show running. If you can't support us financially, just try to spread the word about the show. We've grown in the last year of production, but I think there's still a wide audience of SCP fans out there who would get a lot from our podcast. Finally, in every episode we leave a link in the description to my author page and to Harry's, along with our guests. Consider clicking through and checking out our work. We've both been so pleased to see the growth of the show and hope you'll consider reading some of our stories on the wiki. Thanks so much for all the support during this first startup year of the show. Here's to 5 more years of episodes.
So first of all, this article is located one space before your first article, Integer, which is located one space before my third article, The Breach Keeps on Breaching. Is this the first thing I read and crit of yours? Because I remembered critting it, and I checked the author post, and yes, I did. I think this might be the first article you ever sent to me to read.
Yeah, this is the first one that I sent to you and asked you for crit on it. It is not...
Because I really intensely remember it.
Technically, like, you know... You read Integer before this
I
one.
read Integer,
It had already
because we're
been
side by
posted,
side.
but you did give me crit on
Yeah.
it, technically.
Yeah,
but-
this is the first one where I knew who you were and you sent it to me to
Yeah.
look at. Because I remember it really intensely, because this article begins with one of the finest images on the SCP Wiki. And in a series that is so packed full of high-quality, brilliant images, it's really funny to point out this one. It's a simple drawing of... it's like a 3D drawing of a cube. And it is the simplest possible way to draw a cube. And it's a cube that's white with nothing in it. And the caption is
And
SCP...
transparent.
And transparent. Yeah, it's a transparent blank white black line cube. And it
So
says,
good.
the caption says, SCP-5241, note its anti-memetic properties. And I remember just losing my shit when you sent me this, just because I like, that image is so good. Note its anti-memetic... I don't see anything. It's
So
Wow,
funny.
I used
I
to
was
be,
definitely
like,
going to call it out if you
writer
didn't.
or something.
It's really good.
yeah, well, you
But
will
to
have your
continue,
second coming.
Yeah, you're still a good writer. But also, speaking of like interesting imaging and whatnot, other than the cool digital recreation of the inscription, which is awesome, the anti-mimetic info signature and how it reacts when you hover the cursor over it is just phenomenal.
Yeah, how
like,
does that work? It's a grain, and when you mouse over it, it like resolves into triangles. How did you do that, Place? What is that?
Okay, so there is a component
So
there's
cool.
like an image component on the wiki that Wodenbaz made that you can use to put cool effects on images, and before that existed, it was like a random, just on some sandbox somewhere, just some code that you could use that you weren't supposed to use, and I did that because that was like common at that time, and then all that stuff got phased out and replaced with the proper image component.
Right.
But the triangles behind it, I don't actually have my browser open right now because we were having connection issues earlier.
Right.
But the image underneath it, I believe, is Sierpinski's triangle, which is a fractal that can be generated in lots of ways. And one of the ways that you can generate it is with cellular automata, which is like the type of intelligence that core is supposed to be. Is some sort of swarm intelligence that generates certain interesting info patterns. And so that's why it's that image underneath a blur effect that was just a random component that was unpublished, that was on a sandbox somewhere. That, like, you know, it said on the page that, like, you have permission to use it or whatever. But, yeah, that's what that is.
It works really, really well. It's like practically an Etch-a-Sketch effect.
It's terrific. I'm going to steal it sometime.
This also... I'm pretty sure... I actually... Okay, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think I came up with the concept of an AI having an info signature. I think...
Right. I was really struck when this came up, when I was reading this again for the first time in like 4 years, because again, when we did our multiple iterations of 7528, it becomes a major plot point in there, and that's from your attempt at writing it at the start. And I'm looking here, I'm like, holy shit, this was 4 years before that.
Yeah,
so what's an info signature?
This series, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Grigori.
No, I was just going to say this series has a lot of influence because it's also kind of without this, 8-Ball would have never happened, probably.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 8-Ball definitely wouldn't have happened if we didn't have this, because I wouldn't have done all the thinking I did about, like, 8-Ball being very clearly a different type of intelligence than the rest of them, and the fact that he canonically has his origins from these, like, it's Enigma, like anomalous encryption Enigma stuff related to the Enigma machine or engine or whatever it was, which is like
the Enigma graph.
Yeah, you can go read about this and don't listen to me because I don't have good words to say about it. But it is like a good thing. Go watch a number file video about it or something. I don't know. Don't ask me. But
all right. So what is this? This is an anomaly that is a cube of 8 centimeters cubed.
Wow, I'm a really bad guest to have on.
No, you're not.
Have me on.
You're not at all. Which, that isn't as important as it is that it contained a telepathic artificial intelligence of unknown origin.
Yes. There's a box. There's an AI in the box. It came from places unknown. It gradually becomes clear that it might be from space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I deserve that. And there's an interesting thing that happens in the article that Notkel suggested that I implement, which is that, like, the documentation for this anomaly that no one remembers that they had. They just find, like, a room somewhere in the basement that has this anomaly in it. Documentation for it is, like, lost in some sort of... There's, like, an effort to convert all of the files at Site 15 from, like, an older format that was, like, physical to, like, a newer digital format. And, like, what do you know? The file of this AI just magically is, like, the only one that didn't get converted properly and is, like, erased. So you've got this weird, like, it's coming from inside the house type thing going on.
Right.
As well as the fact that it's from space and it has antimemetic properties and it's an artificial intelligence. And it's a lot happening at once, but it's layered on in a way that allows this to be like a really cool impetus for other stuff. And in the article, someone when you're in a certain, like, radius of it, it can affect you, and it can, like, you experience the antimemetic properties of the thing that it becomes invisible or whatever. And they try to transport it somewhere for further study, and as it's getting transported there, the driver of the vehicle that is transporting the thing somehow ends up inside of its radius, and it ends up getting affected by it. It's like the radius is growing over time or something. The little AI in the box like projects itself directly into the driver's brain and starts like occupying their nervous system and treating it like just any other piece of hardware that just runs information patterns on it and electrical signals. And they recontain part of the AI, and the rest of it like escapes off into the internet. And,
But
yeah.
when they find it, it's stored on what's left of the nervous system, which is a spinal cord fused to the vehicle's electronic system.
Yeah, it was trying to
Just some
like
good
have
body
access
horror.
to more computing power. It wanted to like use all of the things at once.
The
I
fucking
love the
discussion logs are horrific, just with this corpse
I
with
know.
an AI in it, just like thrashing about as it talks.
Core intelligence was not aware of your species' limitations.
Don't like this.
Sorry. Sorry.
And of course, it's talking to Director Vallis, who is huge, gigantic spoilers, not at all spoilers, is the prior identity of the now abstracted placeholder McDoctorate.
Yes, from the in-universe reader's perspective, you're reading a document that was created at a time before Place was the way he was, and of course
You're probably reading it. You're probably reading it at a time prior to that, right?
Well, that's exactly it. Because
otherwise you wouldn't be able to make sense of it.
Well, no, if you're reading it after, like the abstraction effect applies retroactively, and so
Right.
like,
So it would say placeholder.
it would say
McDoctorate
placeholder
instead.
McDoctorate.
Yeah.
Trust me, I had Place had to explain this to me so many times. So like you're not alone.
So what you need to do is you need to go back through this, and you need to change it with CSS so that every time you hover over Director Vallis, it changes to placeholder.
Yeah, if the computer senses you have cookies of placeholder, then
I actually can
it's all
totally
undone.
implement that. It actually is it's like 100% possible for sure to set up some crazy like JS CSS stuff so that like a certain article will display differently if it detects you visited another specific article. That is it has not like I don't have a proof of concept to show you, but that is definitely possible.
That would
So
be
when
super
Place
cool.
when
That's
Place
so
breaks
cool.
the wiki, when Place breaks the wiki with code
Again.
I blame this podcast.
Yeah. That's good.
Well, now you gotta
Like to
do
have
it.
an impact.
It is
Yeah.
with you speaking about like the body horror element of it. It was kind of funny because like after reading or writing this article as a team, it was like a few years later where I saw like there was the whole thing of like running Doom on mice brains or on bacteria or
Right.
something. And it's like
Right.
it's essentially how you could describe this is. Could
Right.
you run an AI on a guy's spinal cord? Yeah,
On a
apparently
meat
you can.
framework.
You guys heard about organoids?
No.
I have.
This
I
is
heard
a
it
joke
in a
that
place where you may have heard it as well.
this is a joke that only this is a
Someone we
joke that
worked
only
with
Harry
was-
gets. Sorry.
So,
Oh.
is that where what we're talking about? Yeah, somebody we worked with went on about it for quite some time.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Grigori, steer
we'll
us
just
back
leave
on
it- leave it
track.
hanging.
I need it. I don't know where I am. What
I
camera
really
do I
like
Okay,
look
that's
at?
all right.
I really like
So-
5241. It's got a lot of really
Yeah.
good little poetic moments in the middle of all the techno stuff. It's a good balance of dialogue and then techno stuff and then scary, ominous phrases and translations of scary.
But it also-
legends and-
As a narrative piece, not as a separate thing, but as part of the series, does a really good job of slowly kind of revealing more to set up, because as much as the AI classification set up the characters, this really sets up what is going on, what is the crisis, and also what are the players. Because if this does a great job of setting up the connection to Maxwellism, to setting up the four different aspects of,
Yes.
we got Hydra, Scout, Cradle, Core, and why, pretty early on, why this is so scary from the anti-memetic stuff, but then also with that body horror aspect of it, just really does a great job of like setting the stakes that like, but without this ever feeling like it's the end of the world. You just have to be paying attention that actually this is really quite threatening. And I really like that about it. It's kind of like quiet threatening in a way,
Yeah.
which is not the right word.
Well, I think it does what this format so good at, because I would say this is the most traditional SCP document in this series, and it just capitalizes on, I think, what we all know that this format does very well, is that quiet dread before everything goes crazy.
As it does.
But that is basically everything that like made me want to write on the wiki anyway, was doing a few creepy unconnected SCPs and then being like, but there's a story here, so let me expand on it. And this series does exactly that, which is why I was like immediately invested. Anyway, so we switch into Project Ruby, which was done by Tiemann and Pedagon. So Pedagon, why don't you set this one up?
Yeah, so I was kind of the backup writer on this one. Tiemann kind of wrote it out and was struggling with some of the descriptions and some of the dialogue. So then I jumped in and helped him out with that. But it was definitely more one of his pieces of trying to set up the essentially the characterization. We got to this point, we were like, okay, so we've set up who's going to be involved, who the villain is, and now what are these, what is the story going to be like from here on out? That initial like opening scene, essentially. Which is funny because it's an opening scene 3 articles deep.
Well, it's you got a cold open sort of, and then you get into the actual characters. It's all right.
Yeah.
Something I really like about this is the gray text boxes, so the bounded text, are the people in the real world.
Yeah.
And the unbounded text is the AIC
I
perspective.
never thought of that.
And it's, in a lot of ways, I think the opposite of what you might expect.
That's so good.
Going in. And, I realize it was probably done just to differentiate, but it works really well on a thematic level because the people, which is Dagon's and ISABI's author avatars, are stuck in their, material, flesh fucking perspectives. And then we have a much more poetic, almost supernatural view on things in a much more traditional prose description from the part of the AICs, especially Mnemosyne.
That's so cool. I'm glad you noticed that.
It's so fucking good. I
didn't even
love
think
it.
of that. It's an inversion of what you'd expect.
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny. You'd expect the
because
people to be in the divs that are boxed off, and you expect the plain blank verse stuff to be the regular characters, and it's not. It's the other way around. That's so cool.
Which also really interestingly communicates who the most important perspectives are in this series.
Right.
Is the AIC perspective, because they're going to be the ones that tell us a lot more about what's happening, because they free up the ability for the narrative to just use imagery and metaphor and, the way that it's described the ocean of, of the anti-mimetic or whatever world, and how Mnemosyne sees them as, whatever, like behemoths or stingrays or et cetera, et cetera.
The best one is the hyperlink. The best one is the last hyperlinked one.
Yes.
Beyond her immediate awareness, in the deep blue, a vast shadow lies dormant. She cannot make out its entire shape, but its presence is unmistakable. She'd better not swim too far. And that's the fucking starfish. So you don't want to make out its entire shape. You really don't want to do that.
Yeah, and I remember us we didn't necessarily have that deep of a conversation of every perspective and stuff, but I do remember me and Tiemann having the conversation of when thinking about what perspective to write from, it was I believe it was a whole team decision of this is Mnemosyne's story. This is the story of her life leading up to this big event.
Sure. Right.
So making sure that I don't know if it was necessarily picking up part of okay, we're gonna take the real life side and pull it back, but very much making sure of well, that's secondary, so that probably gets tossed into a bubble. We want everything to be, this is her perspective. There's no story without her present or without her doing something.
Yeah. And it also, other than working on those levels that we've already talked about, it also does the really important work of establishing why she's important.
Right.
Just in a logistical, capability way in universe? Why is she the one that we're going to be focusing on? Not just from a narrative perspective, but why is she even important to these people or the other AICs? Well, she can see anti-mimetic stuff, and she interprets it in this poetic way, like we've already, like the part that Harry just read out loud. And isn't not only can she perceive it, but she can, in some ways affect it. And
she can touch it. She gets handsy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also the fact of like Place was saying before, of the buddy cop aspect. Introducing Mnemosyne as not just being one of the AICs. Like, she's new. There's the whole new person on the block and a mentor activity, right?
Yeah.
We definitely pulled on a lot of those tropes to try to figure out and how is their dynamic going to go? How can we actually make this feel like a story that is familiar but also new?
It really has that great dynamic of the anime where the teenage boy or girl has the superpowers, but the mentor figure is the one telling them how to be a responsible adult. Get in the robot, Shinji. It really does work on a lot of levels. Just wanted to call all those things out because that's why we have the podcast.
We had talked a lot about.
So Grigori can talk about Evangelion. That's why we have a podcast.
Oh well, I don't even like Evangelion.
We had talked a lot about,
which is how you pronounce it. By the way.
Mnemosyne doing a different type of thinking. She has to process all the information differently in order to be able to parse antimetic stuff, and that means especially because she was an experimental project created to deal with threats of this type, they were willing to make the personality driver not nearly as strong as it would normally be. She's not as restricted by it, so she doesn't quite intuitively get all of these things that are intuitive to humans that have been made intuitive to the other AICs via their personality drivers. And exploring that and making that feel like it made sense and was a valid trade-off for her having her superpowers was something that we talked about a lot and that we were really concerned about getting right. And that was really
I think there was also, along with the personality drivers thing, because I think that's a plot point in some of Lurk D's original work, is Glakon doesn't have one, or there's something about the personality drivers from the original one that we very explicitly were this is before all of that. This is the story of where that bit of lore comes from. And so there's also a massive emphasis on the fact of showing that this is not the same character, even though it's the same face shape, same visual style. It's really not the same character if you've read the other stuff.
Right.
And trying to conflict him with Mnemosyne as being they've both got different personalities, but she's always smiling. He's got more personality than he did originally, but he's also got that more stoic kind of face that you remember, that you would recognize.
Yeah, because in the original stories, he's explicitly not got that personality, whereas Alexandra has a lot of personality, and that's how they play off there. Whereas here, they play off two different personalities, and it works. It works at least as well. It works so well.
Oh, totally. Because he's not all business, but he's the one who's responsible. So he's the one's constantly trying to get her, I don't know if the word trained makes sense, but kind of guiding in a lot of ways, even though she is more qualified, in terms of clearances and also the capabilities and whatnot. Something I really like that works really well is that the prose is all just straight up prose, and then almost, I think, all the dialogue that isn't from the human's perspective goes into the word bubbles.
Yeah.
And which you had already established in AI classifications, but that's really short, and it could have been just oh, isn't this fun? But you use it here for really, I wouldn't say intense sort of conversations, but there's a lot of really good substantive conversations that are going on that just happen to be in these cute, multicolored word bubbles, and it really
it's more visually engaging to read.
Yeah.
And this signals to you that the series is going to have a lot of that, so it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I remember we tried to do with this is that with the older AIAD stuff, you couldn't really tell if are these just the faces, or these just the icons talking in a chat room and that's what they are, versus do they have a form?
Right.
So we also we put a lot of work into like in those intermittent pieces between the dialogue of making sure that we're talking about like her body jerks awake as if from sleep, like giving them that physical form of like, keep this in mind. It's not just that they're on a screen and we're looking at like a chat log that was saved.
Floating.
We're like, no, they're in a whole different space. This is just all that we can see about it.
And you will continue to expand on that as you go on too.
Exactly.
And it was like, it's like really cool because we wrote a fine line, and I don't know if we were doing this consciously, of like, they have all that physicality, but we never say like, oh, they have like a human body with 2 arms and 2 legs.
No.
Right.
Because we're trying to poetically describe what it's like to be an info creature, right?
Yeah.
Like
the only one that gets described as Core in Corruption, because we tried to write like a very visceral, him breaking through the lines kind of thing, and gave him like a very specific.
But Core is also
body.
literally being built into a giant robot at the end.
Yes.
Right. So like it tracks.
Kaiju. Yeah. But I want to call out the fact that it was already hinted at that Glakon changes from here to the already established stuff. But you've also, you've set up that character arc, but also, Namasani has a real character arc here because in these conversations, she's very timid, she's very inexperienced, and by the end, she's like fucking Captain America. I don't mean she talks like Captain America, but like she's like, no, hold on, we're gonna go. Yeah, she punches Hitler in the face, and I'm all for it.
Well, I one of the big things that I remember us talking about with her is like the fact that she's a mimetic or anti-mimetic kind of, that her role is to like have that ability to like deal with mimetic things, is like she's very internal. She's very like driven by her own internal system. She's very like, her power is to look inside and kind of like see what others can't, like bring things out through feeling, through touch, through all these other kind of spaces. So like, she going through that arc of starting timid and then going out, it's not just like a character arc, but it's also like uses the fact that she has the power of dealing with these kinds of anomalies to help tell that story of like, it's a very internal, very personal, very like feelings based thing. So she's going to have a very feelings based arc.
Right.
I don't know if anyone else wants to add to
that. I just like someone saying right and then just silence.
Everybody else gets dead silence.
Well, just let that
else
sit.
Gets to have that happen to them at least
keep
once.
having another thing. Okay, like, let me be honest. I feel like I've
that's what
talked
the podcast
too much
for.
across this whole thing. I feel like I'm like riding over people, and I don't want to be. I feel like I just sound like, oh, I did the whole thing, and here's what it was like.
You're naturally self-conscious about this stuff. It's not a problem at all. Everybody's enjoying this. We're all. This is awesome.
And I also have to get up for school in 6.5 hours, so I'm trying not to pad the runtime too much.
Oh god, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. This was the only time that this is going to work. It's fine. I'm fine. And don't feel the need to rush anyone. I'm really glad to be here with you guys, and I'm excited about this. But I'm not always going to add every single thing I think of. Because
and we shouldn't. And the point of the podcast is to encourage people to go read them. I mean, we're not giving a breakdown of every plot point specifically, for that reason, especially because most of these are tales. So
yeah, there's lots and lots of plot points. But so like, what was the thing? What was the thing you were gonna throw in there? Because that was a preface to throwing something else in there, but we only got the preface.
I made myself forget it. I instead told you that I wouldn't be bringing it up. So
the hazards of limited memory.
Yeah, no, literally.
Okay, good, excellent. Was there something there, Dagon?
I was just going to say another thing. I think Place also helped write like the final box with like the poetics around the octopus, the jellyfish, the shark, the lobster. I think that was a Place edition as well. I think we had you help us write that to try to like make it sure that it aligned with the whole general concept that we were going for. And he killed it. Because I remember... The reason I think I remember that is because like I remember Place being like he was the science one or like very interested in like the tech, and then he just whips out this poetic approach, and it was quite jarring, quite shocking.
he can bust out this beautiful prose, and then he'll go down on how like, oh, my prose is terrible. I do the heavy stuff,
right?
but it's like, yeah, fuck you, buddy. You're really good at this when you actually do it. Also, it's funny that little box there, because you were just talking about how it felt like the first article was going to be the hub. That little box is your hub. It actually links to most of the remaining parts of the series.
It does.
You've got a hub that appears at the bottom of the third tale in a series.
Like I said, it's the first arc of the actual story, and it's 3 layers deep, which is very,
really
very
funny.
topical for this story.
It's really funny.
Crosslinks mechanically are a really, really interesting thing that someone like Pedagon could write a whole fucking like thesis about the way that we use crosslinks on the wiki as a media project. And I really like finding like neat structural and poetic ways to use them like we did here. I will like never ever pass up an opportunity to crosslink in a way that's justified and feels good.
I don't know.
Crosslinks are great.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. Yes, of course. I wanted to add something about this tale before we move on. I don't know if we've talked about it really, but I love the aquatic imagery, and I'm just
Yeah, of course.
shocking. It's shocking. It's not coming from me. I didn't write. At least I don't remember being part of that decision, but. In hindsight, it's probably my favorite thing about this tale, and continuing on, it's one of my favorite things. Yeah,
It makes so much sense, honestly. I mean, if you tried to describe, a vast world of otherworldly information and didn't make it akin to an ocean, I think you would have been missing a golden opportunity for metaphorical imagery. Genuinely, I think it works.
But the other side of that, though, is that like it's very much like the mimetic space, or the mimetic layer is very watery. While like again, when we get back to it in like Corruption and Internet Explorers and other places, we describe the like place, like the actual like layer, the simul space and stuff, as being like very dry desert kind of textured. So like I do think of that was like an intentional thing. I think as a team we decided of being like, when she goes into these mimetic spaces, when we're talking about these mimetic things, it is very much like falling through water. It's that oppressive like being under the water in the murky darkness, looking around as she's like grasping out, just to try to like contrast with the way that we eventually kind of describe the digital.
And it also was very prescient because the wasteland of the internet that it has become in the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
The anti-mimetic parts of the internet.
I wish the parts of the internet I was referring to were anti-mimetic, so I didn't have to perceive that.
We also got to make the starfish an actual starfish.
Right. Okay, but let's transfer into Digital Hydra, which is SCP-5841 by Timeman and Placeholder. And this is just a fucking adventure. There's so many layers to this story.
Yeah, this one was really fun. This one was cool. Like, one of the AIs is like we need to deal with each of the 4 AIs as promised, and one of them is just like showed up in this building. One of the things that we did in the first installment, or I guess the second installment that we did in 5241 that I wanted to keep exploring was like AIs being able, like, or digital informational entities in general being able to occupy these different types of things and treat them like their hardware. And like that could be people's bodies, like we saw in 5241. It can also be like a whole like set of computers being occupied all at once and like used for random stuff. It can be a bunch of people getting co-opted into some sort of zombie hive mind. It can be all of these different things. And so we get to explore that in here. We get to explore like the AI is actually doing their jobs. The point of the AIC is to ease the process of human interfacing with digital equipment. And so here they're actually doing what they're supposed to do, and also like on their mission to catch the anti-mimetic AI thing, and that's why Mnemosiny is here specifically. But like for someone who is reading our AIAD series without having read the ones that inspired it, this is your introduction to like what the AIs do and like what it's like. So we keep up with these descriptions of like Mnemosiny is on this computer or on this USB drive that's being carried around by this other person and then plugged into a computer here and whatever. And that was important. And then we get obviously to the star of the episode of the article, Hydra. And Hydra.exe was, as we were talking about earlier, very, very fun visually to do the art.
Mm-hmm.
Hydra is like the brute strength, like computational matrix thing for the whole AI that the poor like fragment AIs are going to come together, or were together at some point. Anyway, he's the part of it that is responsible for like just doing a bunch of brute force computations and calculations and stuff. And so it's like a low level intelligence of some sort, even though it is able to like handle a lot in terms of processing power. It can access all of these systems and manipulate them all at once. Like it has many heads, like a Hydra, which is a thing in Greek mythology that I don't need to explain to anyone. So yeah, it's cool, and it talks in wingdings because I was also kind of on an Undertale kick when I wrote this, and there's a character in that talks in wingdings. And there's a line in here somewhere that is a quote from Undertale. I think it's the last line of the whole thing. But yeah, the Hydra is co-opting a bunch of equipment. Mnemosiny talks to it and like can see through all of this anti-mimetic shit that it's got going on that's hiding it from everyone else that's trying to interact with it and like deal with this anomaly situation. And she sees that it's scared and it doesn't want to get reincorporated into whatever Gestalt AI thing it's supposed to get incorporated into. And Mnemosiny successfully agrees to take it into containment with the Foundation. And then, surprise, the stinger of the article is that it gets broken out, and the driver of the vehicle that was transporting it got fused to the vehicle the same way that happened in 5241, to tell you that
really
it's
does
the
not
same...
pay to drive for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to indicate that it's the same kill method, because it's the same thing that happened. And Core...
I do want to...
Yeah, reincorporate
I think
something.
I think I want to reinforce, though, that there's two levels of action here, which works really, really well, because we have the conversations between the AICs in the unbounded parts, and then we have bounded parts, which are showing the physical, real-life consequences, the threats of violence from Hydra, the action sequences of like a chase sequence going on here. And then you get to see that from the perspective of the AICs, too, because we also see how capable of violence it is, because of how like Glaucon gets like seriously messed up by it. It's really good. You consistently establish this idea of the two different worlds and how equally important they are to each other and how they interact, and it works really well here, because before this we had the potential of it, and now we see what could be going on between the AICs, while also the agents or whoever from the Foundation are dealing with the physical threats. It works really well.
And I maintain that this article was actually a 3-person... Actually, it was kind of all 4 of us writing it together. Because, like, with that, one of the things that was kind of cool when I was going back through our old group chat, remembering how we wrote this thing, is it was very much like Timon, like, wrote the first draft, Place jumped in and did all of the like logic of like from the AI's perspective, and I rewrote the whole like real world excerpts in there with ISABI kind of like jumping and being like, you know what would be cool if we did this.
Yep.
So like, I think it kind of has that feel of like there's just chaos. Everyone like it's every chunk is written by somebody else, and that chaos, the chaoticness of it, is kind of the point.
Are you all credited on it?
Well, it was time and in place because they wrote the most of it. Our contributions were just kind of like we did a lot of crit on it, but like the final piece kind of has bits of all of us in it.
You guys seem to have done more teamwork than like anybody else.
Yeah, you really.
Our
merged
thinking
together.
was with like how the team contest worked, like because every member is going to be talking about every project and could easily have written a word or two here and there on everyone. Like any team could have just been like, yeah, all four of us worked on every single one and like credited things as such. So we wanted to like use crediting in a way that specified like which project was whose baby, you know?
Yeah. But you could boost all your fucking averages right now.
Well,
yeah, I don't think
one person.
Yeah, there was
permission from technically, but
yeah,
dubiously.
No.
But it is cool. You can kind of like when you're reading it, you can kind of like pick out each of our voices if you know our articles, which I think is just kind of neat. Of just like all of us were going through different things. All of us had like different phases at the time of writing this. Place was definitely going through like an AI safety logic perspective. I was definitely in my like trying to figure out Lovecraftian big bad monster writing. Like all of us had something we were doing at the time, and you can kind of find it all here.
Yeah. The beauty of it is you're able to see that more strongly because you were there when you wrote it. From my perspective, all of your influences are visible in here, but you blend them all really well. It never feels like the voice suddenly jars in one person's direction.
Yeah, and it's really, really impressive. Like, I mean, I'm looking, like, if I look over the list of the things my team did for it, and not one of our pieces were done like this, although we all had influences on each other's stuff through critting. So it's really very impressive that there's really two pieces in your series that are really strongly influenced, and I assume all of them, by each other. And that's really great.
Yeah, we did nothing in this style. My team, nothing like this, where everybody is contributing stuff. It was, and I'm looking at the other entries and like all the other teams who did great work. I don't think any of them have as synthesized a production as you guys did.
Well, we again coming in of like calling it the underdog team again. It wasn't like any of us knew anything about writing. Like I think this was my like third. I entered the contest after I only had like one or two things on the site.
Yeah.
Place was the most well known of us, and he had just posted Integer, I think. We were all kind of nobodies, and so when we got together to write, there was no like hierarchy of like, okay, who's our leader, who's telling us what to do. It was kind of like, Place has the idea, what do you want? All right, and then it was just spending all night. Like I remember having conversations back and forth between all of us for like 10 hours straight. Of like, does this line look cool? Does this look cool? What if we did this?
Right.
Like, I don't think it was an intentional thing. I think it was just all of us were excited as these like fresh writers, brand new people to the format, being like, all right, let's see if anyone cares. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, first of all, you had read the TV tropes page on Buddy Cop Storyline, which is all you really need to know in order to like.
Yeah. And I watch Osmosis Jones and read TV tropes. That's all you need.
And I feel so lucky that I had the team that we had, and that we were all so invested in the thing, and that we all had our different perspectives that we were bringing to it, and like, I don't know, it was my first collaborative experience on the SCP Wiki, and it was so much fun.
I think one of these was my first tale ever, and that was really my first prose dominant writing probably ever. I want to say ever, maybe. Definitely the first. Yeah, it would be Symphony of Iron and Steel. It was definitely the first that you could find publicly. But yeah, just a milestone for me personally, but also just really fun with a team as well.
That's funny.
is definitely my first attempt at prose too. I don't even think I wrote. I didn't do any free writing or anything since writing a pop-up book in grade 5 or something. Between that and this, the closest I got was SCP-5367, which is told through tabs, because that was what I was like, oh, this will look good, and it absolutely doesn't. Right?
Live and learn.
That's so funny though, because similarly, I had some experience with writing prose before I came to the wiki, but it had been a long time, and literally 2.5 weeks before I posted the first thing for this same contest, I had done some tale writing for the first time. It's just so interesting how much this contest really opened up the possibilities for all of us.
Yeah, I'd never written anything with anybody else's stuff before the contest.
Yeah, me either.
I'd only written my own things.
I just love. It's so funny because I don't. In the grand scheme of things, I'm sure this contest doesn't matter that much compared to a KCON or whatever. But this is the one I still think about so fondly. Yeah. As much as I love the results of my KCON entries, and I do, this is the one where I still think I'm oh, if I hadn't joined that team, I would have maybe written a few more things in my series and then maybe never did anything else. I don't know. This is the one that made me go, no, learn how to play with other people's toys and how to deal with other people on the site. And you can make amazing things.
Yeah. This was the most fun contest I've ever participated in on the wiki.
Me too.
And the people in here who I have worked with on other things, don't be offended, but this is the most fun I had. This is the most. If we're talking about the fun to pulling my hair out ratio, this has had the best.
Oh yeah. It's okay. No one's judging you if you're implying that doing 6,500 wasn't necessarily quote unquote fun. It was a stressful 6 weeks.
And there were fun parts, and same with people, but they were much more stressful than this was.
They were both very stressful situations, and they produced stuff we're very proud of.
But even just seeing the people, I remember this contest so good because it felt like everyone was kind of legitimately trying to revive a canon rather than people competing for a winner.
Right.
Wow.
And I think back to it, and I'm while doing this, the reason I was picked up for this team, like I said, was because I was critting, but I was critting everybody in the contest things. That's how people got to know me.
Same.
Is I gave crit to every team I possibly could, and that didn't stop when I joined this team, and I didn't just start doing our own thing. Everyone continued, and that's how I got to know Rounder, that's how I got to know Ralston. Everybody kind of just kept doing things for the greater good to try to make a cool batch of revived cannons.
I can't remember how much critting I did during this contest. I know that's how I met all the people, same as you. That's how I ended up meeting most of these people, is doing crit back when I had a brain I could do it. But you just said, oh my god, wait a minute, you crit Ralston. What, during the Canon Renaissance Contest? Is that what you're talking?
I'm not saying it was a good time, but it was. I do remember,
goose.
That's how I got to know him. That's how I was oh, this guy might stick around after this.
And eventually learned to write in English.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, was he still, using his version of the English language at that time?
Yeah,
He was still firmly in Ralston.
This was Goose Series days, so...
Yeah, the Goose Series was something. I will never be as good at Polish as Ralston now is in English, so it's okay to mercilessly mock him.
Yeah.
I think
he'll do it himself.
Part of the desire to keep things so collaborative and everyone collectively wanting to help each other is because it's the exact opposite of what the format was for the contest that directly preceded Canon RenCon, which does anyone remember what it was?
That was the fucking Exquisite Corpse Contest.
It was Exquisite Corpse Contest.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, well, and even contests since, I look at all the contests that I've run since, and all the KCons got super competitive, super high energy, and being crit captain in the Discord, you don't see people posting their contest entries into getting critique. They're all getting critique in private or asking by DMs, whereas this was just a free-for-all. I remember, like,
because we barely knew each other.
Yeah, popping in for a few hours into SCPD and just critting as fast as the articles were being posted. Like,
I don't even know if I was on Discord at this point.
Yeah, my memory is hazy.
Mostly...
I feel like I must have still been in IRC at the time.
Yeah, I definitely think we were.
Old.
Because I didn't come to Discord till Placeholder physically hauled me over.
Yeah, but you and I had started talking before, like 5520 came out before Canon Renaissance, right? While my team and I were catastrophically failing to coordinate with each other, I was continuing to write my Site 43 things. I distinctly remember that I read 5520 while like out on a walk on my phone, and then I like
you were definitely
still talk to you.
You were definitely still not on Discord, because I remember after the Canon Renaissance ended, popping into IRC and asking Grigori if he liked our series.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just don't think I even really knew it. I mean, I was just not that online of a person.
My team did a group chat in Discord, and I remember it feeling really weird, because that was the first time I was actually doing SCP stuff on Discord, and I was weirded out by it. So I might have gotten hauled over at some point during the contest by Placeholder. Sorry, Grigori.
But even still, like, Discord or IRC, it was still everyone reaching out to anybody for crit, and everybody was free game. None of us had established anything, and like even the big teams, like I remember critiquing like stuff by Noggle, who at the time I thought was like a big author, right? All that kind of stuff. I remember like everything was fair game. No one was being defensive. Everything was kind of everywhere.
Yep.
I'm just looking at the hub for the Canon Renaissance Contest. I want to do my team members a solid. I said earlier that we were at 5th. That is so not true. We got 4th.
Sorry, did you get 4th? Did you? Oh, you beat AIAD, did you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know why I remembered it the other way around.
Well, let's look at which canons have more articles in the recent years.
True. True.
I think we still win.
Damn.
Because we wrote a good solid chunk of another series following up on this one.
Yeah.
But let's check back in 5 years and see.
The smoking
Don't challenge
crater.
Harry.
The smoking crater.
Harry's going to write the next 100 articles in there.
Harry is already like number 1 on the version of the wiki that has all the bullies excluded. So.
Okay.
Well, all right, let's keep talking about this series.
So we're halfway through.
Let's talk about... yeah, I know. God. Let's talk about corruption. Pedagon, what is going on in corruption? And this is, not to diss any of the other parts, this is my favorite bit, because this introduced me to the concept of the collective.
Oh, this one is so good.
Mm-hmm.
See, I was going to come in and say, like, this one I, like, look back and cringe of, like, man, I was edgy.
No.
But, yeah, so this is the one that really introduces Core as a character, beyond just being the ominous presence hiding in the shadows. It also ties in everything towards that hexagon, that hexagon aspect of Maxwellism. Kind of just, like, makes sense of what's going on, the fact that there's a greater world, and then establishes the threat to that world immediately through a lot of like very visceral writing and very visual writing around what would things in that world be seeing at the time when all of this is going on. I don't want to give too much of it away in case people want to read it, but I don't know if that's the point of what we're supposed to be doing.
No, totally.
If you have something like interesting to say about this stuff, absolutely say it, but don't feel like you have to go beat by beat, because we do want people to read this stuff.
Yeah, so let's just establish kind of what's going on. So at this point, we have seen several of the facets, Hydra and one of the other ones show up by this point in the series. As Place was implying about the stinger in 5841. And here we get to see the result of that as they sort of start visiting this Max Wallace conclave, which is this all digital existence, where my favorite part about it is, for a lot of these characters, the hexagon, and there's this whole semi very loosely described city, kind of cyberpunk city that exists on the internet. It doesn't really matter if they are people that are logging in or if they are intelligences that are entirely digital, because it doesn't make a difference to the story. And I took that personally, and I interpreted that to mean, okay, well, the Maxwellists are these fairly progressive thinkers, because it doesn't matter. Intelligence is intelligence, which really informed the way that I think about them entirely. So, it's pretty important to me. But we also see kind of the breakdown of the sort of political and sociological organization of the Max Wallace conclaves, and obviously, there's really important narrative stuff too. But like you said, we're not gonna.
I remember us talking about that whole the political aspect of them negotiating things. I remember making the joke to I think ISABI of it feels like an episode of Star Wars, where it's and here's now for the government action, and trying to make sure that it didn't feel that way.
It doesn't. It feels like a very organic conversation, especially because the antagonist, these merged personalities of the facets, is so alien.
Yeah,
it's real good and very threatening. Even before we get to the part where actual quote unquote violence occurs, there's a real implied violence to everything Core says. I think
Core is so cool.
Yeah, Core's great.
Yeah. And also speaking about the digital, the visual identity, this is also our first one that has music attached to it.
Right, it's got a music module at the top. Nocturne.
A mood setter towards all of this.
Yeah, I played the shit out of that song on piano tiles when I was 11, so I really like it. So I put it on here.
I think it works.
I watched it this time.
It is.
This also is the first time that we see the established visual presentation break format.
Mm-hmm.
I think, because we see the little the word bubbles and the different icons for these characters, but then we see something that completely changes that truth, and it makes you really kind of start to realize, this thing is actually really quite threatening to even just this digital reality beyond the things that happen with the Hydra.
The way Core can fuck up the formatting and everything
right.
He breaks up the narrative as it's being presented to you, which
right.
Helps non-diegetically explain how he's breaking up the universe that he's involved in.
Yeah, it's almost like a shift in perspective, and the author, you guys actually turning to the audience and going, hey, by the way, something crazy is happening, without actually saying those words. It's all indicated through a visual break in this conversation that happens 3/4 through the way through the time. It's terrific. It's fucking so good.
The art for Core particularly is really great. Yeah.
Core picks up some visual element from each of the other fragments as it subsumes them, or assimilates rather, and so it's wearing this this staticky wreath-looking thing that it got from killing the Hydra at the end of the previous episode.
Yeah, and it looks really good. The way Core sort of
really
assembles over the course of this half of the story, and just becomes increasingly things to move away from very quickly.
It's so threatening by the end. The last, image of Core and the last little text box swinging back into the wingdings is so wonderfully threatening. It's just oh shit.
Yeah.
No. And what you were saying of the fading in and changing perspective, even just hinted at before of when they first mentioned the hexagon, the fact that it's in a little green and black bubble, it shows this part of the story is going to be told from the villain's perspective. Kind of trying to set that up early of we're not just locked into seeing this like external thing. Like core, like we know what core's motivations are. We know that this thing is powerful. This thing is doing stuff.
And tying into that as well, in terms of like the visual indicators, the part that I was just bringing up where it breaks the formatting includes an image of core with its eyes closed, and it's like, oh, this is when core is concentrating on the internal or whatever, and it's so it works really well, guys. Bravo.
Combination of visual storytelling, but like the prose and the dialogue all support it so well. It all works. Everything is pulling its weight.
Like, I remembered this fondly from when the contest was going on, but rereading it for this podcast was just like, God, you guys did such a fucking killer job.
It aged so well.
You guys, it's so funny because you're all so inexperienced at even just writing, let alone on the wiki at this point, and it's just such it's such an excellent product.
Like, it's certainly a strength in numbers thing, because, like,
sure,
I wrote, like, the first couple paragraphs or whatever and had some ideas about, like, the structure, but Pedagon just got, like, really, really into this one.
Oh, yeah. I remember you were like, I'm going to focus on our finale, because you had to get all that coding done. You had to figure out, like, do all the art of the giant, like, the winged... I can't remember which character has the wings. Winged everything.
Hedwig.
And so I remember you just telling me, like, here's, like, 2 or 3 paragraphs. We need to have the villain established. We need to have this happen. Figure it out. And I remember, like, I was supposed to be grading that day, and instead I wrote this over the next 24 hours.
And the imagery is great.
Any of my grading done.
The like core, like, dragging its weird serrated fingertips through, like, digital space and having it, like, fall apart into pixels or whatever.
So cool.
And then, like, you know, it runs into these other 2 characters and it gets the information it needs from them, and it, like, snaps its fingers and they forget that it was ever there because of the antimemetic shit. Like, making sure those properties are still being established and depicted and, like, worked into the idea of what the character is. Like, that was all really phenomenal. I remember being very impressed with that stuff.
There's also a really good sense here that, you know, at the end of the last one, we saw the threat of core to a degree because it just kind of slurps up Hydra. But up until this article, I feel like there's been a lot of threatening, like ominous threatening. Like, what is happening is serious because of these things. And here's where we just go, gloves are off. We're just going to see why this is so dangerous. Like, it's a perfect mid-climax point. And establishing, you know, I mean, it essentially ends with a murder. And it's you know, it's not in a very straightforward manner, but, you know, it's such a wonderful, when you get to the end of this one and you go, fuck, what the hell happens next? It does such a great job. It's such a terrific midpoint to really, like, bring into focus just how serious the stakes are.
Absolutely.
Well, and I remember also having conversations with the team of, like, Core's set up to this point is kind of being like this, like, planning thing. Like, it has a plan and it's executing it. And then so, like, I made sure that when it hit the point where it's taking shape, it's not planning. It's just going wild, ripping at the ground, just, like, ripping things out, using pixels it finds. Like, everything is very violently described to be like, this thing may be thinking, but it also is very animalistic. Like, it's unpredictable.
Partly because it just assimilated the Hydra.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It's a very visceral, violent creature by the end. But even, like you said, when it first is showing up and making its presence known, it works really good. But let us keep moving. And ISABI, it's your turn to shine because this is your article, Symphony of Iron and Steel.
Yippee, ISABI time!
Real quick before we jump in, my wife is just getting home, so I'm going to mute myself. But it's on the audio. You're probably going to hear me talk to my wife, so just delete that.
What if it's really funny, though? We put it in.
Oh, yeah. Never is.
Yeah, okay, yes. So sorry if I've been quiet lately, but
no, you're
I've been waiting for this because this is the one that I wrote. Not entirely,
but you can break into any of the other. You're more important than either of the other two. Don't worry.
No, you've done a good job. Actually, the balance between the three of you has been really good so far.
It's been.
Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to chime in whenever.
Hey, this is a train. I cannot stop. I'm letting it go. But okay, this article. Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. This is my first tale on the wiki, and
awesome.
It is a little bit different than the stuff I've written recently, and I didn't quite notice that until I read it again. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's bad, and I still think it's good.
It's great,
even with my current standards. Although I have learned a lot, I would do a little bit differently here and there.
But this fits the narrative that is being told.
Yes, and I think with the aesthetic of the rest of the series, it fits in very nicely. I think when I was approaching this, I wanted to focus a little bit more on the human side, because I'm noticing a lot of the beginning of the story is just about people, which is a little bit different, a little bit of a change of pace.
Yep.
But I took this character, Delacour, from the Hydra article, and it was just kind of a throwaway character, but I decided to turn her into something a little bit more. And I don't think I knew where this was going to go when I started, but it was just the pieces coming together as I worked on it. So I took all of the humans that we had introduced up until this point and kind of put them into a situation. I knew we had to get to Cradle at some point, and that Cradle would die at some point. But other than that, it was kind of just whatever came to mind. I think I sat down on a weekend or something and wrote the whole thing. And then had it created by my team. I know that Cradle's dialogue was a team effort, coming up with all of these different personalities and types of speech. And of course the visual identity and the design of Cradle, I think, is Place's entirely.
It's such a cool one.
Yeah, and I love it. This is my favorite part of the series. Cradle and the split personalities, and how our AIC characters communicate with him and negotiate with him, and it's just very fun. I love it a lot, and I love the little interjections of action from Delacour as things start happening.
Yeah, and like the last two articles, you do a really good job in this series, and this one is no exception, of like really upping the stakes by the end of the latest episode. And there's like this consistent like pattern of like, okay, things are, and like we established in the last article, things are bad, and here's why the threat matters, and the Cradle and all these different pieces keep coming together. And by the end of each one of these, it's just like, oh, the stakes are just like a little bit higher. Like the violence is now brought to the fore. It could have been very easily, like let's pull back to like more fridge horror. But like with each one of these articles, it gets progressive, not just in terms of like where we're going with the narrative, but also, in terms of why this matters and why core, and then the thing that happens with all the different facets, why they're threatening, why it matters. Mm-hmm. It works really well.
And I think like a big part of that is like we tried to show off like that every individual component was an issue. It's not just like the main thing has threat. It's that like every modular piece does. So that way when you get to the end and everything comes together, it's like, oh, this is going to be big.
Literally.
I think this depiction of Core at the end is my favorite.
I
just love
number 2. Really cool. Does anyone spot it? Does anyone know what it is?
Where? Oh yeah, he's wearing Cradle as a Elizabethan collar. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like
it's
the
great.
big old collar thing is the thing that was on Cradle's head.
And you can still see the Hydra
hair.
as his like hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. The increasingly unsettling images of Core are great. They just keep getting more horrific as he continues to screw shit up.
You get to this last image, and not only have we gotten past, I mean, so far up until now, we've been dealing with most of the representations being in these icons of people's faces or the icon of an avatar of some sort. And Cradle already kind of breaks that because we've got these different personalities all around a spoke of a rim. And then when we get to the end, and Core does what Core does, and we just get like, oh no, there's a body. This violent,
much worse.
and look at that. The look on its face, is just like, oh, you're just gonna like bite into that thing. You're gonna tear that apart. Holy fuck!
It's bad. It's bad. This one introduces a lot of action. There's a lot of action scenes in the prose sections that are done really, really well, and then it contrasts with the conversation as they're trying to convince Cradle, and it comes together so well. And once again, we have the real world stuff in the box, while the digital stuff is in the free space, the infinite canvas, which works so well. This is really well written, Asabi. This part
Thank
of
you.
it. You can really tell the shit's starting to get real in this one.
Yeah, I really love it.
It was mine, but I want to say that it may have been Izabi's idea for like the character design, like for it to have sub personalities, and for them to be talking over each other.
I remember Asabi having the idea at first of asking, like, does every component get a voice? Like, I think there was one of the original ideas that was floated was like each of those different speech bubbles, the final thing that the whole unit said was a representative was going to like cycle through them of like, this is the one speaking, this is the one that's argument got through, this is the one that's argument got through. I don't think we ended up doing that, but I think that's Isabi posed that, which then led to the whole visual identity of there being that central body that decides which one to listen to, and then it speaks for the unit.
Right. There's an element of that, because there's always the gray box after the main boxes are done.
I just love how, like, we don't know what all of these identities are saying to each other. We can only really read.
The one speaks only in math. And the one speaks the wingdings.
Yeah, and it's so alien, and it's so cool from a reader's perspective.
And it would have taken away to try and like make all of them have like hover text in this one. Like the final message is doing the work of that for us. But it was just cool to like. Harry put it a good way that I'm forgetting exactly what he said, but that they're all like talking on different levels, like almost like assembly to like lower level code to higher level code or whatever. They're like representing the same information in different ways, kind of.
Right. Only one of them speaks directly in like properly formulated language. One of them speaks in math.
And that's the one that bails.
And that's the one that, and that's also a great thing in the visual design, too, is you gave the Cradle eight spokes? Let's see here. Yeah, and the way you did it, so when the one actually leaves, the other three rearrange in a really interesting pattern on the spokes. So, but you can tell there's something off, because 3 doesn't go into 8 evenly, so you can tell that it's lost something visually.
I didn't even notice that. Yeah, that's very interesting.
There's 2 spokes between the blue and the orange, and 2 spokes between the blue and the green, but only one between the blue and the green, between the orange and the green, because one of them is now gone, and it was originally a thing that had 4, and now it has to have 3 on it.
There's a lot of things that clearly, in talking about the series with you guys now, that happen just organically, or that just because a choice was made, and it works so well on this subconscious thematic level. Like, I easily could have walked away from the idea of having the real world stuff have it in bounded text boxes, but that's consistently done, and probably just because, okay, well, the first one did it, so we should keep that going. And it just works so well because it allows the tricks to play so well because of the way that like the gradient fades in, and we go from light to dark, and then the big reveal.
Right.
And this is the one that really establishes, we're not dealing with the everyday, the corruption showed us that the format could break, but this is like, oh no, we can completely change the tone of the background, the writing, the tone of the writing, things will swing into other perspectives, and kind of nicely sets it up for not as much Internet Explorers, but for Fragmented and Compiled, where we get those really big swings. Yeah. I mean, like, this last image is really great here, but the parts in Compiled, in the second half of Fragmented Compiled, are just holy shit.
Yeah. Well, you can really see, like I was saying, like, you can see that every article here builds to the last one in its in its visuals, in its like decisions, and all of, like, you can tell that we were like playing with things to be like, will this work? I don't know, let's see it. And then we were like, okay, it worked. Now how can we make that even more? How can we stretch that a little bit more? Like, with the way that Cradle's designed, like, that's stretching the Lurkdy, like, formatting to its extreme with now, Absolutely. How do you have 4 bubbles around it?
It's crazy.
Like, there's a lot of series out there where, like, as you're reading through, you're like, okay, so there's a gimmick, and then that's just for that article, and then we're going back to the norm, and then we're going to try another gimmick. This one is like, you can tell we figured something out, and we're like, all right, that's going in everything. Now that has to be what we do from here on out.
It just keeps getting more aggressively, like, stunting on everybody else. It's just like, you don't lose the tricks, you just get more tricks.
And I like that it uses the visual, like the fact that it's a website rather than a physical book. We were like, we really want to use that to our advantage. We're writing about machines, we're writing about AIs. Let's use the fact that it's a digital format, and let's stretch the digital.
Which is like,
I just want to do. Again, just like shout out how you guys worked so well together, and you didn't really even have that much experience with it. Like, there were a lot of teams that were like experimenting and doing crazy stuff, or doing their own things, and then it kind of loosely collaborated, together.
Yep.
Harry's and mine, and not to dismiss either of our teammates, but really wouldn't have turned into cohesive stories if it wasn't for the two of us. Like, because there were 12 entries. I think 12 in my series, in our series, my team series, and fully 6 of them I wrote. And Harry, you did the lines, and that's not to dismiss anything our team members did, but yours, the AID team, you guys, like, there's so much collaboration, like, in a granular way, but then also in like when we take a step back and discuss the way that, like, visually and tonally how things continue to, like, move towards the climax in such a really satisfying way. It's bravo, guys.
Yeah, it was genuinely, like, one of the most fun experiences, and, like, I've definitely taken it forward into, like, my other collabs. Like, what I learned from this became, like, me and Disadron collabed on a bunch of things, and all it was let's go hop in a group chat and just, like, make jokes for a few hours and see what pops out. Right. Like, I have not, because of this being my first collab experience, that's now the only way I collab, is if it's not that natural, fun back and forth where we're all just, like, cheering each other on and being like, hell yeah, let's do this, then it's not worth doing in the first place.
That's so funny. I learned, like, how do I avoid the situation as I can. Like, in terms of, like, okay, let's just have a conversation. Let's have a fun conversation and, like, establish what we're talking about and what this is, and then let's all go in our corners and write our shit.
Right. Yeah.
All right, let's go through Internet Explorers, and then we can very briefly go. I don't want to give away too much about what happens in Fragmented, Compiled, and Isolated.
We'll gush about it. We'll gush about it around the margin.
Yeah,
we don't want to discuss the plot of it too much.
Yeah, it's really, guys. Seriously, listeners, please go read the series. It's insanely good. Okay, Pedagon. It was you and Tyaman who did Internet Explorers, so maybe set this one up.
Yeah.
What's
this
happening?
one was just this is the beach episode of the series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it definitely was just Place was working on Fragmented Compiled. We kind of had the rest of our series done, and we were kind of just waiting for Place to, like, send us the things for us to all critique and us to all give feedback on. And while we were waiting, me and Tuman just chatted and we were like, it would be cool if we just could talk about, like, a city in the space. And that's the article. This is what popped out from that.
Right.
I mean, it's great. I mean, we get at the end of the last one, the AICs are barely make it out of the situation in which Core turns into a kaiju, and this is sort of the background. You know, we could have just moved on to Fragmented Compiled and been like, oh, they made it back, but this is sort of the background action of like, well, like they're out in the fucking internet. Like, so what does that mean? Like, do we show them get back? Okay, then how does that happen? We also get to see these characters because they've developed, but for a couple of episodes now, we've been focusing on, you know, mostly on the threat of Core and what's been going on. We get to revisit these characters and see how Namasani and Glacon have like kind of changed in some ways. Arc, this really serves the purpose of the arc of these characters, genuinely.
Yeah, we really wanted this to be like the character moment. I remember us kind of talking about like the whole beach episode of like Avatar: The Last Airbender and how that still drove part of the plot and still had the conflict and everything. And so that's kind of what we tried to base this off of. So they still have all that like threat and there's still everything happening, but it is a self-contained, essentially. This is what happens, because we wanted to kind of pull back on you can't just keep exhausting your readers of constantly being like, now the threat's bigger. Sometimes you got to pull them back so that you can drop Fragmented Compiled on them and be like, this is what's been happening in the meantime. While these guys were messing around in a city, Core's been doing stuff. Core's been getting bigger.
Yeah, but you also like the entire, and like you said, you push the plot forward, but like the entire reason why things end up in not such a bad place. You know, the resolution is set up here, even though it's not clear that's what's going on, like because of what happens with one of the characters here.
Yeah,
right.
I'm trying to be fairly vague because we're like in the last three. You know, we've been very good about discussing these and kind of talking about little plot points here and there. But like when you get to the end, it's just like, well, I don't want to spoil the whole thing. I want people to go read it.
But it increasingly gets the real sense that shit's getting real. And this one, I think this series does. I liked a lot of the things that were written for the Canon Renaissance Contest. I think retrospectively it was a really terrific contest with a lot of really great work. But the way this story just so naturally escalates and then so satisfyingly concludes in its just calamitous climax it's so well paced, and it's just such a great fucking storyline.
I will say also, you know, and this ties into more the discussion of how well the visuals work here, but even before we had things like, you know, Dissidon's red article, you use colors here so effectively placed in the visuals here to be like so, I don't know if threatening is always the right word, because the red that's used here is certainly maybe not threatening, but like to evoke the idea that like, no, there's real serious capability here. This is significant. You need to pay attention when the red pops up, and it works really, really well.
Yeah, like that's another one of these just, I think, unconscious or subconscious things that just happen naturally. But yeah, like I don't think it was my idea that that one of the sub-components of Cradle should like escape and like tag along unknowingly with 8-Ball, who is the like, you know, nearest to mute character of the cast.
Sure.
8-Ball, like, you know, we don't have to talk about him that much in this podcast because there's a whole other thing you can go read about him that will probably be I'll probably be back on at some point to talk about. But like,
yeah, it's so funny. Like, I'm thinking about stuff that happened in like my series Hecacontries, like things that I brought up just because I thought they were cool in the moment. Like in some of the early articles became like the most important thing by the end, and this feels very much like the same thing where we're like, well, that aspect of Cradle went away, but also like it would make sense if they were still interested in the results, and so they pop back in here, and it's just like those kinds of organic story making decisions where the characters, even one that's basically mute like 8-Ball, make decisions for you, like where you don't even like realize what you're doing, is just, that's the part that I look back on stories I've written and be like, wow, that worked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to a certain extent, they come alive for the author while the author is
Yeah.
writing them, and it's just crazy magic when that happens.
I genuinely used to think people were full of shit when they would say stuff like that. Like,
Yeah,
when
it's like-
writers would be like, listen, my characters do what they want. Okay, buddy.
No, it's like, sorry, man, they really do. You
No,
put them
they
down
do,
together, and
yeah.
they start saying things, and they say things you weren't thinking of when you started writing it.
Which is like, and honestly, like that's what this article was. Like, again, calling it a
Sure.
beach episode, but it really was just like
Yeah,
we
they're
weren't
playing
done
off each
playing
other.
with our we weren't done playing with our toys yet,
Right.
right?
Sure.
Like we knew the ending was coming up, but we're still in the sandbox and we're not ready to go home. And so we wrote this, and it's the same thing for the isolated efficient at the end, where it's like, well, the
Sure.
story's done. But we're all like, well, we have to write a love letter for our characters. Like this was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like let's have this. Like those are the two stories that very much are, to me at least in my memory, were entirely based off of just I'm not ready yet. I'm not done yet.
It's great. It's all great. Right.
No, I really think the interesting aspect of that is, you know, and it makes perfect sense what you just said about how you weren't done with playing with the sandbox, but also what it, you know, and maybe what this is another unconscious thing is because you were just like, hey, I just want to play with these toys one more time before we get to the climax. The characters really, you know, and it's a clear intentionality here, but the characters really just kind of like became much more fully rounded through
Right.
that process.
Yeah.
Right.
And it just I mean, like the ending, the way that the result and the climax of Fragmented Compile happens would not have meant shit to me as much without this part. So you say it's the beach episode, but like I care so much more about what happens to Glaucon, 8-Ball, and Masani because of this article. You know, like they were cool characters and they were established and they had personalities and I cared about them. But this is where it showed me, no, they're people. They're
Go to
changing
the
their
beach
because of the
sometimes.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think back to like I think Rounder commented it and called it like it's the Ralph Breaks the Internet of the SCP wiki.
Well, and that's the thing. I was actually
Like-
going to make that comparison because your version of the internet and also the Maxwellist Cipher City and the earlier one, way better than the Ralph Breaks the Internet version of the internet. Also, where did that Cipher City thing come from? Was that pre-existing? Because it just sort of
Cipher City?
yeah.
That was Sunny Clockwork that did that.
Was that Sunny? Was that
Yeah,
for
that's-
Sunny?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's super
That was a
cool.
Maxwellist thing.
I really
yeah,
like
Sunny,
that.
Sunny made a thing that was like a lore piece, extended lore piece attached to the AIAD stuff. Where, well, actually, it might actually have been Lurkdy technically, because I think in one of the two original series where the crew is going to deal with Hatbot, they go to Cipher City and Hatbot is there pretending to be Wen, and then they like deal with
Okay.
Hatbot.
And I think there's like
but-
a extensive post from Clockwork
Yeah.
in the discussion of one of those pages that breaks it all down.
Well,
Isn't it?
no. So Sunny made a thing that is an extension. They just didn't come up with Cipher City, but they like did a bunch of work like characterizing Cipher City and establishing this like important thing with the Maxwellists. Where like, okay, Cipher City is a Maxwellist city where the Maxwellists go to hang out, but it's supposed to be like a free-for-all, like lawless wasteland. Where in actuality, it turns out that Maxwellism is not as decentralized as it wants to be, even though the whole thing is supposed to be about being decentralized. It turns out there's this entity called the Hexagon that is secretly like overseeing all Maxwellist stuff and is running Cipher City, and the Hexagon has these 6 members with these specific identities, one of which is a pre-existing character, Saint Hedwig, that Ip had wrote about a long time ago. And then in the discussion post of that, Sunny described each of the characters of the Hexagon and like some of their thinking behind the world building, and that was what like became the meat of what we did in Corruption, where I did like pixel art renditions of all of the icons of the Hexagon that Sunny had
The
originally
Hexagon,
made, and all of that stuff. So that is where Sunny comes in, but that's where Cipher City comes from.
I really like that element. I just wanted to get back to that just quickly. Yeah. So
Before we move on, I want to point out that what happens to 8-Ball because of this aspect of Cradle that jumps on wasn't intentionally a callback to the info signature, the mimetic info signature in 5241, or is that just like a happy accident?
I doubt it. I don't think that I understood it at the time nearly enough to be able to
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the art, like
the art,
the triangles, like.
Oh yeah, no, I had not thought about that at all. It's just intended to look like what the sub personality looked like on Cradle.
Yeah,
and
it's just a
that's
lucky
just
little.
There's a square with squares in it. There's a triangle with triangles in it. Like there's a circle with circles in it. So it was not intentional at all. But that is really cool.
That's a cool happy accident, though.
The only Easter egg I thought there was like the whole corrupted 8-Ball looks like HAL 9000. Like that was the only one that I remember.
Yep.
I remember looking at it and going, "Yep, that's the idea that we're trying to get."
What are you doing, Dave?
Well, like, you could be like, oh, 8-Ball's visual style is based on a literal magic 8-Ball, and, like, what's inside of a magic 8-Ball? The little blue thing, and that thing is a tetrahedron, isn't it? But, like, obviously I was not thinking about that.
Well, lots of happy accidents, that's okay.
So fragmented compiled then?
Yeah, like, let's...
light on
how we would
establish.
So this is the part where I went off in a corner and I was like, I'm gonna do the thing and I'll talk to you guys later. And they were like, okay, but the contest ends in 5 minutes. And I was like, it's okay, it's fine. And I I drew a bunch of pixel art in like 4.5 minutes.
A lot of it.
And then did the CSS in 20 seconds.
Some of it is insane, dude. The corrupted Hedwig. What the fuck?
Oh yeah. So that thing I just did for fun. Like that didn't need to be in there at all.
It's fucking insane. It's so complex and so cool.
Like, Aethris did a really cool rendition of what Hedwig's body would look like, and then I wanted to do a pixel art version of that, but like not. I wanted to just like get like a T-pose of the body or whatever, just like because I was just interested in like mechanically figuring out how I would do it in pixel art. And then I made like a version of it that was like red themed and like battle mode, and I did a green version that was like after it gets corrupted by core, and then we were like, what if we stuck that in the article here? Like if it can fit in somewhere, it's fine. But it's just like that piece of art is in there because I did it, and so we might as well show it off, as opposed to just being created.
You say it that way.
It's fucking terrific.
You say it that way, like, oh, we have this, so we might as well use it. Like, fuck off. It looks incredible.
Yeah, it looks so good. It looks like, I mean, they're all the drawings in this whole series are good, but this one is just something like, oh, goddamn, wow, like, what the fuck? There's like so many like details to this.
It's beautiful. It looks like a video game sprite, like a really good, high quality, post Super Nintendo era video game sprite. It looks so good.
But as impressive as that is, the giant eyeball that happens at some point in this with somebody else's face inside the eyeball is that's my favorite fucking part. Good. Like, there's lots of good stuff that happens with the giant eyeball, but when I was just like, when I was rereading this and just like kind of coming through, I'm like, oh, cool, the eyeball, and like, oh, motherfucker.
You're talking about in the compiled half, yeah?
Yeah.
In the compiled.
I mean, there's it's genuinely serves as like a jump scare, even though it's something you're just scrolling down. Like, it's just like, oh, it works really well.
Compiled is amazing. It's got animations. It's got the mouse over text. It's got the infinite canvas. Now the infinite canvas is black because shit has gotten serious. And the way it all it runs through with the visuals, and it plays with the format and what you can do with web stories. It's so fucking good.
Well, even the theme, the SCP Wiki logo is replaced by Core's Eye, and the text goes very simplistic.
Oh,
like everything, everything about the page is completely changed.
I kind of miss
that. You're reading from inside of Core. is why.
Yeah.
Like you're
Right,
inside.
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
'cause
yeah,
this
yeah.
is in course
Yeah, sure.
formatting. Oh my god.
I also
Like-
really like that there's like, even though it's fairly simplistic, you're actually like showing action here. I mean, like in the
Yeah.
way that like the part of Cradle that then takes action against the part of Core. That's there's like genuinely like an action sequence.
Yeah,
here.
there's dynamism here and visuals.
Yes, yeah, and it and again, you established a very limited visual premise of how these conversations were going to go, and then you slowly kind of revealed layers until you're like, fuck you, I'm not limited. And it's
right.
just so fucking
it's
good.
all just like boxes that you can put anywhere on the screen, and like then you can just go into. I don't even know if I was using Sprite yet. I might have been using like Piskel app or some awful browser-based something or other. But you can just go in and like draw some pixels and like use the circle tool and get something that looks kind of interesting. And you can just throw it. You can just make it transparent and throw it on a black background and put some text boxes underneath it. Split them in half. Throw them in different corners. Like who cares, right?
And just casually describe the creation of just legitimately a work of art. It's like,
Yeah.
just it's so damn good, man.
I mean, you get to the point where like it's not just little action sequences or like a close up of the thing here. You actually have like a perspective piece towards the end where you get to see, because the change in what happens and the sense of like seeing the back of someone's head and
Yeah,
thinking, like,
that's
wait,
unusual.
you could do that?
The back
like-
of Glasson's head, that's something nobody
Yeah.
does.
And it's really, really fucking effective because you get to have that sense of, oh, that's how big that is comparison to this character. that
Do you
we
guys
know.
understand how long it took to make it not look like McDonald's fries? The back of Glassman's
I
head.
bet.
Oh, nightmare after nightmare, dude. About like.
That's
anyways, it was.
I can see why you
Tough.
would have had to go labor in the lab on this whole fucking thing.
Well, and
yeah.
even just like with the formatting, like you can tell Core is like a pure villain, because like back in Corruption, the music is there and it has all the citation, whereas in the compiled half, it's just the music,
Right.
and only villains don't cite things on the page, right?
Yes.
right. No, it's allowed because it's the same song that I already cited in Corruption, just slowed down 10 times.
It works real well, by the way. The fucking
It does.
grinding horror of the way that song plays over top
Oh my
of it.
god,
It
it's
works so well.
fucking good.
And the prose and everything, the character voices, everything in this is so good, and it feels like such a great way to go into the finale of it, and then achieve the finale of it.
Something that is far too rare on the wiki is long form fiction that then delivers a satisfying climax and a resolution. And
I'm gonna
this so
finish
perfectly does
Archetypicals,
it.
okay? You can get off my case.
No, I'm not bad. I'm not. Hey, listen, Harry and I have a whole fucking bad, huge series
Lord,
that we only
yeah.
did a third of, so we'll get there.
We will.
But like, don't worry, I'm not judging.
We still need to do
but
Temporary
it's-
Secretary 3.
Yes, we
Oh
do.
yeah, hell yeah, man. Anyway, all right. I think we've explained why this is so important without giving too many details. It's a roller coaster, and you need to go check it out.
I will
And
say,
unfortunately, as the most like impressive part of it, I think it's the lowest rated of all of them.
Well,
It's because people
no one made it
didn't
there.
get to the end.
Tales
Yeah.
series.
Yeah.
Hey, think about it. It's a tale that's at 87. Like
Yeah, fair.
tales so regularly
Guys,
are like
the-
plus
the-
30.
The epilogue that follows it is higher rated.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
I think
That is
it
weird.
might have been like the fact that it's two fragments might have like screwed people's like hit the rating module thing up in their heads. It's possible.
Oh, it's
Oh,
fragmented.
maybe.
So they.
Yeah. Just one thing before we move on from it, though. Do either of you other guys remember what it like an impression you had when he finally had what he was working on to show you like what it looks like all composed together?
Oh, the chat was just like insane. It was like Place posted it for us. Well, he'd been posting like bits of the art throughout as he was like trying to figure things out.
Right.
But like it wasn't until like when he posted the full page, I just remember like all of us were just blown away.
yeah.
And just like
Yeah.
spent the whole like he was like, "Do you have like what's your feedback?" And all of us were like, "Fucking post it." You don't like like I remember we had like slight wording changes on the second page for like making Core seem more menacing. But, like, that's it. The rest of it was just, like, we kept getting caught into, like, just reading it and being like, oh, shit, right, we had a job.
Yeah. I think
There must be something... Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think the first time I read it was when it was posted. So that's why I said earlier, like, it felt like being a reader and a writer on this team at the same time. Because I saw this alongside everyone else, pretty much. And I was also blown away with everyone else.
And that leads us nicely into... We won't have a whole lot to say, probably, because it's the ending, but Isolated Efficient, which is where it ends. By Tiaman.
This one I didn't read until it was posted on the wiki, so I'm in the
Everybody gets
opposite
the experience.
position.
I want to say, there's like I want to make a comparison here with this, and hilariously, it's going to relate to 40K.
What a surprise.
Yeah, so they just recently, they had a very extensive, like, took place over 20 years series of novels that finally ended at the end of last year, or at the end of 2023. Or maybe it was the beginning of 2024. Anyway, and there are all these, so the last novel of the last part is split into 3 novels, and it's about, this huge, like, overburden, like, incredible conflict that's going on. I'm not going to bother anybody with what it's about. But the point is, there are every, like, I would say third chapter, Dan Abnett, who I think is one of the best professional writers out there, even though he does stuff for 40K, will take these chapters and all he does is title them Fragment, because there's so many characters and he wants to touch on so many different aspects of what's going on to really express the scope. And it's just these little, like, snippets. And this works in such a smart way in that same facet of the fact that, like, hey, let's focus. Yes, it's a love letter to all these characters you made, but also let's touch on the fact that we had a lot of different moving parts here, and now I just want to spend 4 paragraphs to be like, and this is sort of like where we're at with that, to kind of show the payoff, but also more importantly the ramifications. I think it does a really good job. There's a real, without giving away the end of Compiled and what happens and what prices are paid, it does a really good job of going like, no, this had an impact on these characters even if they're not aware of it.
Yeah, and it serves really well as a prequel to the next stories, which were the first ones that were written, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. Yep. Which is the beautiful, like, such a smart way to do it. This last piece of art, did you do this place, or is this taken from someplace?
I did not make that image. This
is a found art.
Oh, okay. It's very evocative.
Pedagon should know where that image is from, right?
It's
it's in licensing.
It's in the licensing. Yeah.
It's from Piotr Sidolico, whatever.
Yes, good old Piotr Sidolico.
I'm not going to pretend like I know how to pronounce that last name. Siedlecki? That's
it's
probably
called
wrong.
Fractal Rain. You grabbed it because it's called Fractal Rain.
Fractal Rain.
Because of course it is.
Ralston would have been able to pronounce it. So
yes, that's what I was thinking. It looks like it might be Polish.
Well, Ralston has refused to come on the podcast, so
we'll get him.
Ralston has access to a set of, like, phonemes that humans don't normally have access to. Like, he can pronounce it. It's not like a fair way of qualifying.
Also, can I just say, I'm sorry, Ralston, if you, like, I'm not trying to bully you into coming on the podcast.
I'm not sorry to Ralston, and I am trying to bully him. And I hope when he hears this, he directly messages me in a public... Ralston, if you're hearing this, please, right now, currently, message me in a public space. Tell me, I just heard you saying that thing, and I hate you, and I want you dead. Say that to me, and then,
Maybe not that, because then somebody's getting banned.
No, but, like, put a /s for, like, internet hygiene, and then put a /j and /s, and then everything works out great.
Grigori, I was in a side chat VC a while back, and Ralston came on.
Oh, you told me, yeah.
We all, like, fucking lost our shit, because Ralston came on and started talking with a human being's voice, and not a single person in the fucking community heard his fucking voice. We're like, what the hell? You're talking? Oh my god, you talk.
I get it. I just want to make it clear that I'm not trying.
So
to
weird. No, yeah, I am.
Ralston.
I am also trying to bully Ralston, just like Play says.
My mental image of Ralston sounds like E.T. from the movie E.T.
Daniel Ashworth going home.
All right.
Isolated Efficient, which is a lovely little capstone by Tiamat, and we looked at the image, and it's a lovely little emotional stakes, but there's not a lot we can say about it because it's all about how it ends.
Any serious discussion of it gives away what happened at the last.
It's entirely just a summary of spoilers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The thing that he gets rid of at the end, we wanted to imply that thing becomes Crom, but it doesn't actually work that way because Glisson and Alexandra, right? Not Alexandria, even though she's related to the right. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, unfortunately, but it would have been really cool if that did work because it would have. Made
return to ancient Greece because Alexandra is supposed to be Hypatia, right?
Is Alexandra Hypatia?
I mean, it makes sense.
It's like Alexandria is in the Library of Alexandria, which was a Foundation precursor because we decided that Alexander the Great is actually the immortal administrator of the SCP Foundation, who has been around for thousands of years, and the special lighthouse, the Pharos, that looks over the Library of Alexandria is actually an ancestor of 8-Ball's intelligence and is analogous to the lighthouse tower that is Site 15 that also looks like 8-Ball and looks like 052, which is derived from 8-Ball, and like 12,000 other Greek history things that magically fit into the history of the Antikythera mechanism and the what. I can't. It's another episode.
You guys have
Bring us back for another episode.
Can you have Place on for a day and just have it be him and do like a history of the wiki? And just let Place don't
PlaceholderMcD's history of the wiki.
Just organically make shit up and then just go like, and then at the end be like, and all that was real.
That fucking
no sources cited.
Exactly.
Dude, we found that on the island,
it's all canon.
On the like one little island that we were setting things in the fucking story, that we had implied that there were like ancient Greek like anomalous sects of an anomalous religion, whatever, that were like prophesizing shit on an island in Greece, and then I'm like looking at Google Maps and finding out that there's actual fucking like relics and statues on the island that like nobody knows about that aren't documented.
Writing 8-Ball was just a nightmare of connections where Place and I were in a DM talking and just 47 things all connected together that we were adding this to the story because we thought they were cool separately, and then we kept finding out they were already connected to each other. Anyway, that screaming random stream of stuff that he assaulted you all with, that was what my first call with Place was like when we talked about the Rise No Canon 5956, and I gave him this vague idea of a thing I was going to do in one story, and then he did my very first Discord call with him where he just did basically that, and at the end of the call we had a whole fucking article basically. So yes, I agree with all of you when you say that's my favorite kind of collaboration, where you amp each other up and you all enjoy the way things come together, and then it's good, and then other people can enjoy it and say it's good, and even invite you on a podcast to tell you in your faces that it was good.
All full circle. The circle of
5 years later.
Yes.
Right. I know. Well, that's our fault for taking 2 years to finish up with GOIs, and by finish up I mean talk about most of the ones I want to talk about. I'm just mashing the push to talk button. Don't matter, except for sarcasm, which we will do. Anyway,
I'm glad this was my idea to do limited memory. It was a good idea.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Grigori did
so
all
I was going to say closing thoughts, but I think we have covered it all. Do you guys want to plug anything, like something recent or something you just want people to take a look, or even just like, hey, you can find me here?
Can I do the credits button? I want to do the credits button. Is there a credit?
Okay.
Is that a?
I don't know what that means, but yeah.
You know when like you start like rolling the credits in the movie, and then there's like a little scene that plays while the credits are scrolling. You know, the credits button.
Mm-hmm.
Can I?
Oh.
Is that a?
So.
Do you guys roll the credits in this podcast, you audio roll the credits.
The credits
Do
would
you
just say Grigori Karpin.
Right. Okay.
No, I have no shame. I'll plug stuff.
Yeah, good.
Dagon's got a new 05 command post where he becomes a reserve admin.
where I quit.
Everybody go look at that.
Yeah.
Dagon's got to go do some research.
Yeah, well, stay here and do some research.
Stay here, specifically here to do specifically the research.
That's right.
Yes,
This conversation, this call will continue. None of us will be here, but the research will happen, so that's what matters.
My disembodied voice will still be
analysis
talking
of this
over
podcast.
everyone, just like it magically.
But no, if you like the writing of like Corrupted or any of the other like that stuff, check out 6217. My 6con entry with Respectators that was also
hell
based
yeah.
on,
that was good.
I'm so glad that
Broken
thing got
God
made.
lore and bringing everything out.
Oh yeah,
I'm so proud of that thing.
I don't know when we talked about it, but we talked about it
Yeah,
on the podcast.
You managed to, in that one article to practically come up with yet another Broken God cult that's interesting. It was a great article. I really liked that one. I think we probably talked about it during our K-Cons episode.
Oh, you're right, because we did a KCON episode where we talked about stuff that didn't win that we just really liked and we wanted to talk about. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
That was
Respectators.
posted.
Like, I got connected with Respectators. I forget exactly how it happened, whether I found their thing organically or someone told me about it. But like, oh yeah, it was like they had a proposal on CN or a KCON winner on CN or whatever that they reposted to main site as under like a different number because that's like a thing that you can do.
Sure.
And then they were working on their 6K thing. It was really cool, but because English isn't their first language, like they need a lot of help with like grammar stuff. And I was obviously working on Inevitable with you guys, but I knew Pedagon was like totally the right person for the project. And then
Harry
really
saved us at the end because
I came in and did some spag, yeah.
Yeah, because we ended up posting that the morning I got married, so I was posting things to the wiki.
Oh
while getting my suit on to go to
that was insane.
No way.
You,
What
dude.
the
I'm
fuck
it's
is wrong
crazy
with
that
you?
you even participated in the con. Like, it was ridiculous.
What was the number again, Dagon?
6217.
All right.
And I'll include a link in our show description.
Attaboy.
All right, Place, do you have something you would like to send people to? Other than this series, obviously.
Okay, guys, I need you to do something is a huge favor for me, right? I need you to flip a coin, and then if it lands heads, go back 60 seconds and go to wherever Dagon told you to go. And if it is tails, go forward 60 seconds and go to wherever ISABI tells you to go. Even if you already did it, and if you already did it, then do the other one. That's my contribution.
Thanks, man.
Excellent. Thank you.
The interactive elements, I appreciate that. You really are stretching the boundaries of the medium as always.
You're like,
Can you
I'm
still
going to
put, like,
change the way
annotations
podcast mediums.
Well, okay, this isn't a video. Well, no, it will be. There will be a video form of it. There will be nothing happening
Yeah, there will
visually,
be.
but there will be a form that exists as
Yeah.
a video because of the times we live in. So you can put annotations on it.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I probably won't
won't.
have the forethought to do that. But yeah, I need to get better at the YouTube.
Well,
game.
surely
But
you
anyway.
have like a funny little editor creature in a dungeon somewhere that you like can just.
Oh, yeah,
ship
yeah,
instructions
we're
to.
really
it's called
successful.
Grigori Karpin.
Yeah, that's Harry.
right.
Yeah.
No, I do
No.
no work.
Or he's not the one that
does
edits.
nothing.
He is the gremlin.
I
He
just
is
make
the
it harder
gremlin.
for him. That's all I do.
My pet tulpa
I just give him
myself
a
is chained up in my cellar in my basement.
Two gremlins.
More
in a
often
trench
than
coat.
not, Harry, about 5 minutes after we finish, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go have a smoke. I'm done. I'm tired. It'd be like, hey, about
Can you
35 minutes in, you're
Yeah.
going to want to cut this part out. It's like, God damn it.
Yeah, almost every single time I'll be like, there's this thing I said here, and I don't want that. You can remove that. And I didn't do any this time. There's
Yeah.
There's a few
nothing.
things I want to cut just because I know I made a noise or something, but that's nothing.
No, fuck it. Who cares? ISABI.
Can I make a suggestion there? Gregory, save all those and make a Harry's Noise compilation.
That'd be really funny.
really,
Bonus
really
episode.
boost the podcast. They're just Harry noises.
Oh my god, that would be really, really, really funny.
Just to compile all
Like
the Coke
April
cans.
Fool. Yeah, that would
Oh,
be so
that'd be
fun.
good.
Maybe-
God damn it, you said it out loud.
Yeah, April
No, I'll cut
Fools.
that part
Bleep it.
out. Oh God. Okay. All right. Good. All right. Anyway,
Isabi.
Yes.
Isabi.
Your turn.
Okay. Well, if you want to know what I'm doing these days, it has nothing to do with anything discussed here. But if you're curious,
That's true.
you can read SCP-7804, which is my child. And it has everything that I've been doing for the past 2-3 years.
And if you have listened to any past episodes, you know how. I mean, I'm a fan of Places and Pedagons, obviously, but we have spoken very highly about your stuff, Isabi, and we will have you back on to talk about kind of your own canon, but your series, your whatever, your corner of the wiki.
Yes, that's a different beast.
We love your stuff.
Yeah,
It's a very different beast. It's so funny looking back on this with that as the perspective.
I know, it's really great. Okay, do you guys want to give out social media stuff, or fuck it?
Didn't we? Isn't that?
I don't know.
Isn't that what you already asked? Isn't that what we already got opportunities to do?
No, here's where you say
but
your
I was-
stupid tags for your stupid.
You don't have
social
to.
medias.
You know, I don't care.
Grigori, what
yeah.
are your? Give me your social media handles.
We always
on every
do.
platform.
It's Grigori Karpin on every platform.
At Harry Blank.
I mean,
SCP be sky.social, because Twitter is destroying the world and I've deleted all my posts.
I don't know what Twitter is.
I'm on Bluesky. Yes, we don't know what bird is anymore.
Yeah, jump on Bluesky if you want to know about future episodes or hear about them. That's where we'll be making posts.
Twitter's evil.
That's where I'll be making posts.
Elon
Fuck
Musk's a
Elon
monster.
Musk.
Guys,
Fuck you,
at
Nazis.
Fuck
Simply
Elon
Creative
Musk.
People
Guess
on
what? You know
Reddit.
what? There is no fucking Roman salute. Okay, that doesn't exist.
just Nazis.
It's a myth. It's a myth from the 18th century. Genuinely,
We're in danger
it's
territory.
bullshit.
You said we couldn't talk about this on the podcast.
I can say how much I hate that motherfucker. Anyway,
Demonetized.
all right.
In a video
Well, thank
game,
you
he's
all.
talking about doing it in Minecraft, guys.
No, I just said I hate him. I didn't say I was gonna do it either.
He's gonna hate him in
You can
Minecraft.
hate anybody.
I'm gonna hate him in everyday life.
In
Okay.
Minecraft.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you everybody for coming on. Especially because we had to jump through some hoops to get everybody on board. But thank you so much for making yourself available for our return episode.
Yes.
Thank you for
Thanks so
having
much.
us.
Thank you.
I am very
Of
grateful
course.
to be. I feel like I haven't talked to you guys like directly enough. Like it's so
It's been
nice
it's
to,
been a
to
minute.
be
Yeah.
in here with Pedagon and ISABI again, who I don't get to talk to enough. Pedagon, you're always busy, like you actually like positively contributing to society, which I don't know why you do.
I hate that.
Yo,
And
dude, I'm doing a PhD on the wiki. I'm not contributing anything to society.
ISABI, you're like writing things that I just, there's too many things and I feel bad. The last thing of yours that I read was, I think, the first installment in a series that you may or may not have continued that was taking place on mobile site 184 from Admonition.
Oh, yeah, I think.
Right?
Yeah. That was a while ago. I think
Yeah.
I'm still doing that.
I remember really, really liking that. Like, that was really good. I always really like your stuff. But it's just
Thank you.
nice to talk to you guys because it's been so long.
Yeah, this is my first time on this podcast. It's been really fun.
Yeah.
great.
No,
I'm just
I'm
glad
really
I'm allowed to. I'm glad I'm allowed to finally go on these things without supervisor approval. I'm a free man.
It was honestly a lot of fun. You all did a great job.
Yeah, and I mean, just want to give you guys credit for not only collaborating well on this series, but also collaborating well on this
Yeah,
podcast.
didn't
Like,
talk
there was
over each other and shit. It's
so
perfect.
little talking over. It's so good. Like,
Super
I was
impressed.
so like, even having two guests can be problematic. Having 3 guests is like, what's gonna happen? How well is this? We're gonna do it because I don't want to. I want everybody on board. But this worked out really great, and just thanks for coming on.
And,
All right,
And
I guess
once
we're
again,
done.
great
Kiss
job,
each
all
other's
4 of
asses.
you, for the work that you did on this series. And I hope
Yeah.
everybody goes and reads it. And hey, it's nice to talk to you all out there in listening to us land again. It's a whole land, right? People who listen to us.
Yes, it's specifically a land and not any other kind of setting. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, if you're speaking from like the simul space, it can be.
Oh.
I'm speaking from
it
Red
back?
Note.
Let's tie it all right back. All right. Well,
I'm in a basement.
Okay, I guess we're not going to get a last Harry joke.
Like, was originally pioneered by Lurk-T and their AIAD stuff, obviously. They made these original icons with faces on them in Hero Machine, which is like an old software that like you have to use 3 or 4 peripheral softwares to even get to work. And like did this thing where the head is on either side of the screen, that it's like a text conversation type situation. And that was like a really inventive way to use the format, especially when there were so few CSS things like that at the time. So that was like really, really strong, and it was a really, really cool thing to like continue exploring. It was a thing that we felt should get revived in like this Canon revival thing.
God, I hope that your recording is coming in clean.